Chapter 779. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few people left in the Lingfang Valley. Yu Qianqiu was high up. Immortal Crocodile was standing on the hillside where Enchantress and Yenyu had fainted, when Lanfeng was holding Lu Yanqing who was in a coma, and Nongzhu and Li Duxing were staring at Yu Qianqiu on the top of the mound. Bing Qingzi and Yan Zhuixing looked gloomy. Others could leave but they knew they couldn't. Yan Zhuixing clenched his fists and stared at Yu Qianqiu, gnashing his teeth. Yu Qianqiu, you've been fooling me. His heart was filled with rage as he spat out each word. He now deeply suspected that Yu Qianqiu was not as unbearable as he had seen him to be. Instead he had been playing a game of cat and mouse. As long as he jumped up, Yu Qianqiu would come out and slap him. At first he couldn't figure it out. But then he remembered that Yu Qianqiu already knew that he practiced the demonic book and knew the weakness of the blood escape, but he didn't make it public. It was obvious that he wanted to play with him slowly. This hatred could be said to have no end. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't know when he had fooled this little devil. While thinking, he put away the big golden wheel and the Transcendent's golden body behind him. The mound that was tens of meters high quickly melted into the ground, and he also fell with the height of the mound. Before he spoke, someone already couldn't help but want to get even with Yan Zhuixing. After listening to Wen Lanfeng's narration, Li Duxing suddenly turned back and shouted coldly, "You don't need to know whether I'm fooling you or not. Go to hell." He turned into a shadow and stretched out his claws to attack Yan Zhuixing. Bing Qingzi blocked it without hesitation. The two experts at the late stage of Huashan realm collided with each other again. Shockwaves suddenly rose and exploded. The two of them turned into countless afterimages as they quickly fought against each other. Every fierce exchange of blows was shocking to the hearts of the spectators. Everyone watched the battle silently and found that Bing Qingzi seemed to be fighting desperately. It was the first time for those who knew him to see him like this. Perhaps it was because he knew that he had been implicated by Yan Zhuixing and several soul formation final stage experts were eyeing him with hostility. It would be very difficult for him to have a good ending today. Thus he decided to go all out. Since it was highly likely that he would not be able to keep his life, then he would protect his reputation. Bang! Both of them retreated violently at the same time. They hadn't even stopped retreating when they turned into afterimages and crazily collided with each other. Darking Palm. It was Bing Qingzi's voice. The temperature around suddenly dropped, and sporadic snowflakes suddenly fell. A wave of palm shadows blew the falling snowflakes and covered Li Duxing who was shooting over. Humph! Li Duxing snorted and shouted, "1,000 miles of solitude." His gray shadow, like a flowing light, flashed into the palm shadows all over the sky and danced in the air. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the two of them were forced back again. The palm shadows that filled the sky between the two of them slowly disappeared. The scattered snowflakes silently moistened the ground, and the surrounding temperature slowly returned to normal. The Spirit Fragrance Valley was completely silent. Both of them stood still and stared at each other from a distance of nearly 100 meters. Li Duxing looked proud. The claw of his only arm was holding a piece of his chest, which was covered with blood. Bing Qingzi looked at his chest in silence. The blood that gushed out quickly dyed his whole body. The bright red color was extremely dazzling on his white robe. In an instant, the blood that gushed out was forcibly stopped by his profound cultivation. However, there was a big hole on his chest. His beating heart and expanding lungs could be seen clearly. The appearance of his chest was no longer concealed. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng looked at each other in dismay. Yu Qianqiu also secretly stuck out his tongue. 1,000 miles of solitude is really powerful. The combination of speed and strength is almost perfect. I'm afraid that few people in the world can rival him with this one move. No wonder it's said that few people can fight with him for more than 10 moves. Moreover, he only has one arm. If he has 2 arms, it must be even more amazing. Sure enough, a madman must have the capital to be arrogant. Bing Qingzi suddenly smiled with a bleak expression. He shook his head and said, "I've long heard that Li Duxing's 1,000 miles of solitude is known for its speed and invincible. Today I see that it really lives up to its reputation. I didn't lose unjustly. Are you being merciful?" In fact, Li Duxing could have killed him with one move just now. But for some reason he was merciful. Li Duxing pointed at Yan Zhuixing with his only arm and said, "I want to kill him, not you." Bing Qingzi laughed bitterly and said, "You're famous for killing. You've washed thousands of miles with blood. I've never heard of anyone who fought with you surviving. This doesn't seem to be your style, does it?" Li Duxing snorted coldly and didn't answer. Wen Lanfeng was probably the only one who knew the reason. When Li Duxing was seriously injured by Changchun and was dying, it was Lu Yanqing who saved him. Lu Yanqing was so kind that she couldn't stand fighting and killing. After saving such a god of killing, Lu Yanqing had repeatedly restrained Li Duxing not to kill indiscriminately. Li Duxing's life was picked up by Lu Yanqing. In order to appreciate her kindness, he respected Lu Yanqing as miss and obeyed her orders. Thus, it became his first honorable business to give up killing. Later, Lu Yanqing felt the miserable fate of those individual cultivators in the cultivation world, so she ordered Li Duxing to live in the ghost village to intimidate all the individual cultivators and give them a place to settle down. Bing Qingzi didn't take it seriously when he didn't answer. He turned to Yan Zhuixing and sighed, "I've died once. My life was given by others. From today on, my mission has been completed. I can't help you anymore." After saying that, there was a faint smile on his face as if he was relieved. Seeing Bing Qingzi's chest dripping with blood, Yan Zhuixing roared with his eyes wide open, "Master! I'll avenge you." A black evil spirit emerged from his body at once. He opened his mouth and spat out 7 red lights, which immediately condensed the black evil spirit into 7 vivid flying snakes with ferocious faces. The scene was extremely weird. Among the people present, only Yu Qianqiu had seen it before. It was the first time for the others to see it. Their eyes flickered. The thing that Li Duxing was holding loosened and fell to the ground. He wasn't in a hurry to fight. He squinted and said, "Is this the so-called demonic skill? It's really unique. I'd like to have a taste of it today. Boy, don't hesitate to fight." Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and flashed to the middle of the two. He looked at Li Duxing indifferently and said, "Senior Li, you'd better take a break." Li Duxing snorted coldly without expressing his opinion. He looked at Yan Zhuixing as if to say, "You have to see who he wants to fight with. Yu Qianqiu, get out of my way." Yan Zhuixing roared, "I'll settle the score with you sooner or later." "Are you out of your mind?" Yu Qianqiu looked back at Yan Zhuixing indifferently and said, "Yan Zhuixing, it's all because of you that your master ended up like this today. You can't blame others. We all cheat and kill each other in the cultivation circle. Today you are destined to have no revenge. Don't talk nonsense about revenge. Now it's time to end things between you and me. I'm a man who will do great things. I don't have time to tangle with you." Yan Zhuixing didn't talk nonsense anymore. He waved his hand and shouted angrily, "Kill!" 7 flying snakes shot over like arrows. Yu Qianqiu raised his palm, and 7 balls of azure flames flew out, just in time to catch the 7 flying snakes that were rushing over. It was the nature of the flying snakes to escape when they met their nemesis. The 7 cyan flames were wriggling violently and changing into various shapes. The 7 cyan flames flew all over Lingfang Valley. The things inside seemed to want to break free. However, ever since Yu Qianqiu started cultivating the Guiyuan sword art, even though his cultivation level wasn't high, his divine sense's ability to divide and control things was simply unparalleled in this world. Perhaps even Bai Changchun wouldn't necessarily be stronger than him. If he didn't try, he wouldn't know. Once he tried, he would definitely give others a shock. This was what it meant to not waste a skill that was painstakingly trained. There would be a day when it would be useful. Within the 7 cyan flames, there were anxious hissing sounds coming from the cyan flames. They were anxious to break free from the cyan flames that were their nemesis. However, the cyan flames followed it like a shadow. It flew everywhere and burned its body crazily. It wasn't afraid of how powerful it was. Everything had its vanquisher. With the sharp eyesight of everyone present, anyone could see that the flying snake was a living creature, and the 7 balls of green flames were completely controlled by Yu Qianqiu. Under such circumstances, it was easy to imagine how difficult it was to control the green flames to burn the flying snake. Everyone gasped and they were shocked in their hearts. What a formidable soul-splitting control technique. Nongzhu and Wenlan Feng looked at each other, unable to hide the shock in their eyes. Li Duxing's eyes flickered, and Immortal Crocodile looked solemn. Facing the entanglement of the flying snakes and the cyan flames, Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at them. He stood there calmly and said indifferently, "Yan Zhuixing, do you want to fight with me with such little ability?" Yan Zhuixing's face instantly turned pale. He gritted his teeth and stared at Yu Qianqiu. With such a powerful control skill, he had been hiding his cultivation. He could feel how painful the devilish spirit snakes in the fire were. Under the burning of the cyan flames, the 7 snakes' resistance was sharply declining, and their bodies were shrinking rapidly. If he let it go on, the 7 traces of spirit separated from his primordial spirit would be damaged, and the consequences of the primordial spirit injury would be terrible. Without any hesitation he quickly performed the magic light sweeping shadow, and rushed over like a flowing light. He waved his fist and shouted angrily, "Devil Fist!" In terms of speed, without teleportation, Yu Qianqiu was definitely not as fast as Yan Zhuixing's magic light sweeping shadow. However, before his opponent moved, he had already predicted the enemy's movement. His figure flashed into the sky, and the two brushed past each other. Yan Zhuixing quickly turned around and bounced up in the air, chasing after Yu Qianqiu and punching him. However, as soon as Yu Qianqiu bounced up, he had already turned around and slapped Yan Zhuixing with his palm. He shouted calmly, "Absorbing Star's great skill." A cloud of white mist burst out of Yan Zhuixing's body and was absorbed into Yu Qianqiu's palm like a flowing cloud. At the same time, dense cyan flying swords burst out of Yu Qianqiu's sleeves, directly smashing Yan Zhuixing's shriveled body into pieces. Chapter 780. Bing Qingzi, who was watching the battle, saw Yan Zhuixing being blasted into pieces by Yu Qianqiu. His body swayed a little and he was on the verge of collapse. His pale face instantly became even paler. However, Yu Qianqiu seemed to be afraid that Yan Zhuixing would come back to life. The green fire flying swords in his sleeves kept shooting out, chasing after the falling body. In an instant, a large pit was created on the ground by the rapidly shooting flying swords with a crackling sound. Yu Qianqiu jumped to the edge of the pit, without any intention of stopping. The flying swords rose and fell rapidly, bombarding the pit. "I was afraid that you wouldn't die, I was afraid that you wouldn't die. Live for this daddy to see again, live for this daddy to see again." Yu Qianqiu stood by the edge of the pit and muttered in a seemingly deranged manner, while controlling the countless flying swords with blue flames. Li Duxing, who didn't know what was going on, looked back at Wen Lanfeng in disbelief. He seemed to be asking Yu Qianqiu what kind of hatred he had for Yan Zhuixing. Yan Zhuixing had been smashed into pieces, but he still didn't let him go. That was too much. Wen Lanfeng, who was holding Lu Yanqing, was speechless. Immortal Crocodile, who was on the hillside, turned to look at the sky. He really didn't want to see it anymore. He sighed in his heart. What a talent. Nongzhu flashed to Yu Qianqiu's side and craned her head to look into the pit. Yan Zhuixing had already been smashed into pieces, and the pit was filled with splashing mud. There was no wreckage at all. Nongzhu asked suspiciously, "He should be dead, right?" Yu Qianqiu said seriously, "It doesn't matter. It's not a bad thing to keep bombarding. This guy's demonic skill is very evil. I've experienced it myself." Hearing this, Nongzhu's face twitched. She looked at the others and found that Bing Qingzi, who had decided not to intervene, seemed to be angry. She coughed and said, Okay. It's almost time. Can you maintain the demeanor of a torturer of the demon ghost region?" "Okay. Got it. I'll stop immediately." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and narrowed his eyes to size them up. He looked like he was determined to exterminate them. As Nongzhu had expected, Bing Qingzi roared crazily, "Yu Qianqiu, don't go too far, or you will be punished by heaven." After all, Yan Zhuixing was his disciple. Seeing someone torturing a corpse like that, he couldn't hold it in anymore. Yu Qianqiu turned back to look at him, his eyebrows raised. Just as he was about to explode in anger, he noticed that the others were looking at him as if he was a monster. Pursing his lips, he waved his sleeves, and the green flame flying swords that were shuttling through the pit instantly disappeared into his sleeves. He patted off the soil that had splashed on his palms and was about to use the earth element to bury the deep pit. However, he frowned and glanced at the pit. He still felt a little uneasy after thinking about it. With a flick of his finger, a green light shot into the deep pit. Nongzhu even stuck her head out to the edge of the pit curiously, wanting to see what he had shot into the pit. Suddenly, with a buzz, a fierce green flame soared into the sky. Nongzhu was so scared that she immediately teleported away. She pulled her hair and shouted, "Are you crazy?" Yu Qianqiu looked at her with disdain as if to say, "Who asked you to stick your head out there?" Then he waved his hand and pointed at the raging flame, suppressing the fire and concentrating the high temperature in the pit. Even the scorching sun in the sky couldn't take away the radiance of the resplendent azure light. Everyone was speechless as they looked at the azure flames burning in the pit. They couldn't hide the disdain in their eyes as they looked at Yu Qianqiu. Hiss. Suddenly, a few intense and sharp hisses were heard in the Lingfang Valley. It was as if metal was rubbing against each other, making everyone's hair stand on end. They quickly looked towards the source of the sound and saw that the 7 balls of green flame had stopped dancing. Obviously, the flying snakes inside had been completely refined. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and the 7 balls of green flame went into his sleeve. At this time he was also slightly relieved. Just as he was about to retract the raging green flame in the pit, the fire in the pit suddenly soared into the sky. Everyone thought that Yu Qianqiu was going to play some tricks again, but they saw Yu Qianqiu waving his arms towards the pit. His face was red, and the veins on his neck were bulging, as if he was forcibly controlling the green flame to suppress something. Nongzhu frowned. She was the first to notice that something was wrong. Immortal Crocodile suddenly looked back. While everyone was surprised, they suddenly saw the green flame spew out of the pit like an explosion. Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated a few steps. Nongzhu flashed to hold him and suddenly turned back to stare at the pit that forced out the green flame. A majestic, ancient and oppressive aura suddenly erupted from the pit, instantly shocking everyone present and causing their hearts to tremble. They saw a ball of black light slowly rising from the deep pit, and there seemed to be a little person in the middle. The black light hung in the air, emitting a thick and ancient aura that shocked the common people. It was like a domineering king looking down on the world. Such a powerful and terrifying aura oppressed everyone so much that they could not even think of resisting. Immortal Crocodile looked at the mysterious black light in shock, and his blank eyes seemed to pull his thoughts back to the distant past. Motherf asterisk cur. That dog is here again, ba. Yu Qianqiu pushed Nongzhu away, spat out the bloody saliva in his mouth, and turned back to Immortal Crocodile and roared, "Old monster, why are you in a daze? He's not your lover, quickly kill him. Otherwise, that bastard Yan Zhuixing will come back to life again." He exerted all his strength. Swoosh! A huge green broadsword of more than 10 meters appeared in his hand. He flew up, and with a cry of, "Ah!" he slashed at the mysterious black light with all his strength. At this moment, everyone came to their senses because of Yu Qianqiu's roar, and they knew that the consequences were extremely serious. Nongzhu's bamboo flute whistled out. When Lanfeng quickly put Lu Yanqing on the ground, and his huge silver sword shot out, setting off waves of Gangqi, a flying sword also flashed out of Li Duxing's storage bag. Everyone focused their attacks on the mysterious black light. The mysterious black light seemed to have sensed that someone was going to attack it, and it emitted black light thorns directly facing the attacks from all directions. Bang! 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 A series of loud noises sounded, and the waves of Gangqi surged, making people feel that the world was changing. The earth shook, and the towering medicine hut mountain collapsed in the shaking. Each of the 4 attacking silhouettes spat out a mouthful of blood with a puff sound. They were violently thrown far away. Bang! 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 All of them sank deep into the mountains surrounding the Spirit Fang Valley. It gave people the impression that the stronger one's attack was, the greater the rebound force would be. The huge green fire broadsword collapsed at the moment of the counterattack, and so did the bamboo flute and the flying sword. The 4 attacking weapons were all destroyed in the blink of an eye. Bing Qingzi stared at the mysterious black light in the sky in disbelief. Lu Yanqing was still lying on the ground, but her body was covered with a thick layer of dust. The 2 people who didn't attack seemed to be unharmed. The 4 people who were shaken away pulled out of the deep mountain, and only Yu Qianqiu crawled out. Fortunately, the 4 people were not weak and they were all masters of the Huashan realm. Although they were all badly injured, it was not fatal. After the 4 people came out, they all stared at the mysterious black light in the sky with blood dripping from their mouths. Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand to wipe his mouth and nose, but the blood kept flowing out as if it was free. The mysterious black light flickered, and just as it was about to fly away, a figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere to stop it. Immortal Lord Crocodile's arms turned into 2 huge rough palms, and he directly held the black light in his palms. The black light seemed to be unwilling to be controlled, and it surged violently. Immortal Lord Crocodile gripped it tightly with a serious expression, and they were in a deadlock. Suddenly, Immortal Lord Crocodile let out an angry roar, and forcibly dragged the mysterious black light down from the sky. The people below were shocked. They didn't expect that the mysterious black light, which the 4 of them couldn't handle together, would be dragged down by him alone. Except for Yu Qianqiu, everyone else gasped. They didn't know who this person was, and how could he have such a profound cultivation. However, everyone could tell that the pair of hands that had thrown the escaping Yan Zhuixing back were the same pair of giant hands. Yu Qianqiu's nose was bleeding profusely as he waved his arms excitedly and said, "Good job, old monster. Kill it for me." Perhaps he was too excited, but then he clutched his chest with a pained expression and couldn't shout anymore. Nongzhu and Wen Lanfeng remembered that a certain guy had mentioned looking for help in the South Sea purple bamboo forest, and they looked at the ashen-faced Yu Qianqiu at the same time. They didn't know where this strange guy had found such an expert. At this moment, the scenery between heaven and earth suddenly became a little dim. Everyone looked up into the sky and found that a hazy gray fog had suddenly appeared in the sky above Spirit Fong Valley. It wasn't actually thick, but it seemed to cover the blazing sun's radiance. What was inconceivable was that a pair of slender and huge eyes suddenly appeared in the hazy gray fog, and those cold and merciless eyes looked down indifferently. Everyone felt that it was an illusion, but they inexplicably felt that the pair of eyes contained an awe-inspiring and unquestionable majesty. At the same time that the strange phenomenon appeared in the sky, the mysterious black light that immortal Lord Crocodile was slowly dragging down seemed to have infinite power in an instant, and the light suddenly soared. Bang! The two huge hands that immortal Lord Crocodile had conjured instantly collapsed. After the black light broke free, it slammed into immortal Lord Crocodile, who had already been sent flying. Bang! Puff! Immortal Lord Crocodile's figure was instantly sent flying into the deep mountains in the distance, and a loud rumble could be faintly heard in the distance. Everyone stared at this scene with their mouths agape. After the mysterious black light hit immortal Lord Crocodile, it instantly turned into a stream of light and quickly disappeared. The group of people was stunned for a long time, and suddenly found that the sky had returned to normal. They couldn't help but look up, and the gray fog in the sky had disappeared. The pair of slender, cold and merciless eyes had also disappeared, as if nothing had happened just now. Chapter 781. At this moment Lingfang Valley had already lost its beautiful appearance. It was full of desolation and not a single plant could be seen. The ground seemed to have been plowed a few times. It was like a chicken that had shed its feathers. It was so naked that it was somewhat unsightly to look at. The Medicine Cottage, the landmark mountain in Lingfang Valley, had also collapsed. None of the people present had expected that the consequences of killing Yan Zhuoxing would be like this, especially the mysterious black light. It was simply unbelievable. It seemed to be much higher than Yan Zhuoxing's cultivation. How could this be? Everyone was full of doubts. When Lan Feng was the first to wake up among the dumbfounded crowd. His skin had basically turned black from the inside out, and he seemed to be shrouded in a layer of death qi. The first thing he did after waking up was to rush to where Lu Yanqing used to be, dig up the soil and dig Lu Yanqing out. Absorbing Star's great skill. Yu Qianqiu's shout shocked everyone. They all looked over and saw a dried corpse slowly falling down in front of him. When it hit the ground it was smashed into pieces. The dead man was none other than Bing Qingzi. Nongzhu flashed over and stood beside Yu Qianqiu. Looking at the wreckage on the ground, she covered her slightly uncomfortable chest and frowned. "Are you a mad dog? Bite whoever you see. He has already given up. Why did you still kill him?" Yu Qianqiu raised his hand to wipe the nosebleed on Dahua's face and said ferociously, "If Yan Zhuoxing is completely dead, I don't mind letting him go. The problem is that he ran away again. This old guy is most likely to be of great help to him. He can't be left alive." Nongzhu sighed speechlessly. 4 experts at the late stage of Huashan realm died in the Battle of Lingfang Valley, and all of them died in the hands of this guy. From today on, this guy can be regarded as the torture envoy of the demon region. With his means, there was no need for her to worry anymore. It seemed that Bai Changchun did not choose the wrong person. Nongzhu turned her head and asked suspiciously, "What is your cultivation level now? Why do I feel that you have reached the Huashan realm?" Yu Qianqiu had a messy face and a head full of braids. He looked around and grinned evilly, looking exactly like a member of the beggars' gang. His sinister smile suddenly came to an abrupt halt as he cried out in alarm. He teleported to the original hillside and looked around, not knowing where the Enchantress of 100 Charms and Yan Yu were buried. He immediately used the earth magic art and quickly sensed the location where the 2 women were buried. The soil there retreated like a tide, revealing the 2 women lying inside. He quickly checked the condition of the 2 women, and after discovering that they were fine, he heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground. Nongzhu followed them. When she saw the 2 girls, she looked slightly unhappy, but she still asked, "How is it?" "He's fine, but he's being controlled by the demonic eye. I don't know how to get rid of it." The worried Yu Qianqiu suddenly paused and said to Nongzhu, "Keep an eye on them for me. I'll be back soon." Then he flew into the deep mountains in the distance, in the direction where Immortal Crocodile was sent flying. Flying in that direction he easily found Immortal Crocodile. The target was very obvious. On a collapsed mountain, a battered and exhausted Immortal Crocodile was sitting cross-legged, healing his injuries. Before Yu Qianqiu landed, he opened his eyes and looked up, then closed them again. Yu Qianqiu knew that he was healing, so he landed beside him and did not disturb him. After a while, he slowly exhaled and opened his eyes. As soon as Immortal Crocodile opened his eyes, he looked at Yu Qianqiu with a serious expression and said, "The demonic god." Yu Qianqiu squatted beside him and was stunned. He asked in surprise, "What's wrong?" Immortal Crocodile shook his head and sighed. That Yan Zhuixing is indeed a person blessed by the demonic god. The demonic god made a move just now, and that aura was the aura of a god. Yu Qianqiu smiled sheepishly. In fact, he had long guessed that Yan Zhuixing was a person blessed by the demonic god. He just deliberately hid it, mainly because he was afraid of scaring this guy. Now that this old monster was injured, he really felt a little embarrassed. He continued to fool him. "That's impossible. Aren't you still fine? If the demonic god really made a move, I'm afraid you would already be dead. How could you still be sitting here talking to me?" Immortal Crocodile smiled bitterly. "The demonic god doesn't even bother to fight me. We are not on the same level at all. He only indirectly made a move to warn me. If he really made a move directly, I would not be alive. What kind of person is the demonic god? He is a world-shaking genius of a generation. According to Immortal Emperor Jin Tai, who had come into contact with the gods, even in the divine realm, the demonic god is a well-known figure. How can we hope to reach him?" Yu Qianqiu laughed and patted him on the shoulder. "That's right. He is a god. Why would he bother with small fry like us? He will do his own thing, we will do ours. What's there to be emotional about? There's no need to be afraid of him." Immortal Crocodile's expression twitched. "That's a demonic god. How can we not be afraid?" "Who cares? Just don't provoke him next time. If we can't afford to provoke him, we can at least hide from him." Yu Qianqiu tried his best to squeeze out a smile on his face to comfort him. However, the more he smiled, the more anxious he became. Immortal Crocodile immediately rolled his eyes. "You want a next time? You really think that the demonic god is just a decoration? You will die. Next time, do it yourself. Don't call me. I can't afford to provoke him." "Ah, who would take the initiative to provoke him? Let's talk about the future in the future. Let's get down to business first." Yu Qianqiu coughed. "Old monster, let me ask you something. Do you have any way of finding out where Yan Zhuixing's primordial spirit escaped to? You still want to do it?" Immortal Crocodile stood up and sneered. "Provoking the demonic god again. He's not to be trifled with. Don't cause trouble until the demonic god breaks through the void and arrives personally. When that happens, you won't even have time to cry. No one in this world can protect you. Damn it. I don't care if he's a demonic god or a bird god. So what if he's a demonic god?" Yu Qianqiu was enraged. He stood up and waved his arms, shouting, "Even if I don't go looking for that bastard will come looking for me for revenge sooner or later. Rather than that, I might as well take advantage of his weakness and kill him." Immortal Crocodile snorted. "If you really want to kill him, why didn't you use the divine sword just now? Before the demonic god makes his move, that black light shouldn't be able to withstand the power of the divine sword. I guarantee that Yan Zhuixing's body and soul will be destroyed. Isn't that the end of it? Divine sword?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. His temper disappeared and he stood there dumbfounded. After a long time, he suddenly beat his chest and howled. "Damn it. Why didn't you say earlier that the divine sword could break it? I forgot." Immortal Crocodile sneered. "If I had known that he was protected by the demonic god, I would have definitely told you that the divine sword could break it. But I wouldn't have come. I'm really impressed with myself now. I actually fought with the demonic god." Yu Qianqiu immediately became listless. It was all because of his own thoughts. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have hidden it from him. After a long silence, he asked weakly, "Is there any way to find Yan Zhuixing's escaped primordial spirit?" Immortal Crocodile shook his head. "You overestimate me. Even the powerful demonic god isn't omnipotent. The human world is so big. It won't be easy to find him unless he shows himself. Maybe, since the demonic god wants to protect him, he might use a great technique to break through the void and take his primordial spirit away. Even if he didn't leave, his body has been destroyed. He shouldn't be able to cause any trouble in the short term." Sigh. "I hope so." Yu Qianqiu sighed and waved his hand. "Forget it. Since we can't find him, forget it. The most important thing now is to find a way to get rid of the people controlled by the demonic eye. The celestial realm and the demon realm had a great war before. There should be a way to get rid of it, right? Otherwise, with the power of the demonic eye, the demon realm wouldn't have been sealed, right? The demonic eye is the demonic eye. It's one of the demonic eye's moves that can control people. It's called demonic eye ecstasy. The two cannot be confused. Demonic eye ecstasy is just an evil art in the celestial realm's terms. It's not the most powerful art of the demonic eye. Demonic eye ecstasy is powerful because if the controlled person doesn't expose himself, it will be difficult for others to find out. In fact, once discovered, it's not difficult to get rid of it, Immortal Crocodile said slowly. Yu Qinshuo's eyes lit up. Not difficult to get rid of? That means you have a way to get rid of it? You said it yourself. The immortals and demons have fought before. Naturally, there is a way to get rid of it. Otherwise, if the people of the celestial realm are controlled, what's the point of fighting? We can just admit defeat. Immortal Crocodile said in a low voice, there are many ways to get rid of it. The demonic eye mainly controls people's primordial spirits. Many people in the celestial realm have extraordinary attainments in primordial spirit cultivation and can easily get rid of the control. In fact, the controlled person can also get rid of the control themselves. As long as their cultivation surpasses the caster, their primordial spirit will also be stronger, and they can usually get rid of it. There's also the simplest and most effective way. Kill the caster completely, and the spell will naturally get rid of it. Yu Qinshuo rubbed his chin and said suspiciously, the last two methods can definitely be rejected. You're a dignified immortal lord, so you must have extraordinary attainments in primordial spirit cultivation, right? Then, don't tell me to get rid of the control and bring them to the celestial realm. I can't do that at the moment. You know the reason better than I do. Although my primordial spirit is strong, I've never dabbled in this aspect. I can kill people but I can't save them. Immortal Crocodile said teasingly, there's a good way. You can find the caster and ask him to get rid of it himself. Yu Qinshuo's face immediately darkened. He said in a low voice, after talking for so long, it's all nonsense. Immortal Crocodile waved his hand and interrupted him. I already said that there are many ways to get rid of it. What's the rush? Let me finish. In this world, there is a kind of person who cultivates magic arts that are mighty and righteous. They are born to be the nemesis of evil and crooked cultivators. All ghosts and monsters are just small tricks that can't see the light in front of them. A mere demon eye ecstasy can easily break them. Yu Qinshuo pulled a long face and said, don't tell me you want me to go to the celestial realm to look for it again. I admit that I don't have that ability. Are you happy now? Immortal Crocodile said in surprise, why do you need to go to the celestial realm to look for it? Is your master's morality technique not strong enough? With your master's methods, it's easy to get rid of this little spell. Chapter 782. Morality Technique? Yu Qinshuo's expression froze as he thought of Bai Changchun's evil means. After a moment of hesitation, he slowly shook his head and said, old monster, you'd better help me think of another way. He had promised Bai Changchun that he would not look for him again. If he broke his promise, he might not be able to find Bai Changchun again. It was better not to do this unless he had no other choice. Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly disappointed. In fact, he really wanted to interact more with people like Bai Changchun. Such people had extraordinary insights in cultivation. If he interacted more with experts with such high comprehension, he would often be enlightened with just a word from them and solve the problems that had plagued him for many years. He thought that Yu Qinshuo could not find Bai Changchun, so he took out a small bottle from the storage bracelet and handed it to him. Take it. Yu Qinshuo took it and was stunned. He asked, what's this? Immortal Crocodile said disapprovingly, Spirit Awakening Pill. It can expel evil spirits and remove the control of the vital spirit by demonic arts. Damn. Why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier? What are you talking about? Yu Qinshuo turned around and flew directly to Lingfang Valley. When he returned to Lingfang Valley, he saw Lu Yanqing standing beside Li Duxing and Wen Lanfeng. Nongzhu also brought the two unconscious women to them. Lu Yanqing had short hair and tearful eyes, but it did not diminish her peerless elegance. Instead, it showed another kind of unique charm. She was really a natural beauty. She was staring at the collapsed medicine hut with tearful eyes. Yu Qinshuo landed beside them and looked at Lu Yanqing from head to toe. Although he was a little annoyed, he was still amazed. Yu Qinshuo coldly snorted and said, Seniors, you must keep an eye on this crazy woman. Her good intentions are not repaid and she keeps biting people. I now suspect that she has already been controlled by Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye. Seniors, you should be careful. Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and suddenly bowed deeply to Yu Qinshuo. It's all in the past. You don't have to mention it anymore. She was just anxious and confused, but now she has sobered up. What? Yu Qinshuo pointed at Lu Yanqing and turned his face. F***ck. I risked everything to save her, but she turned around and tried to kill me, and now I can't even talk? Aren't you guys being too overbearing? When Lan Feng was rendered speechless by his words. Li Duxing, on the other hand, appeared to be very calm. He closed his eyes and paid no attention. Lu Yanqing slowly stepped forward and bowed to Yu Qianqiu. It's all my fault. Before she finished speaking, a large string of tears immediately fell. Yu Qianqiu's anger was almost extinguished, and he couldn't vent his anger. He cursed in his heart, beautiful women always take advantage of others. Looking at the lifeless Wen Lanfeng, he coughed and changed the topic. Great magic Dr. Lu, don't cry anymore. It's all in the past. Do something useful. Senior Wen is almost dead because of you. Hurry up and find a way to save her. Don't always let the person who cares for you get hurt. Then he stopped talking to her, walked to the two unconscious women, and showed them the small bottle in his palm. As soon as he opened the bottle, everyone immediately smelled a fragrance. As the fragrance entered their lungs, they were refreshed. They knew the thing in the bottle was not simple. Yu Qianqiu poured out a white elixir the size of a soybean into his palm. Nongzhu beside him asked curiously, "What is this?" Awakening elixir. It said that it can remove the control of the magic eye. I don't know if it works. Yu Qianqiu looked around with the small pill in his hand. He was also confused. Why is it so small? Wen Lanfeng's attention was on Lu Yanqing. Hearing this, he suddenly turned around and stared at the thing in Yu Qianqiu's hand. He was worried about Wen Rui. If he died, Wen Rui would be the only pillar of the Wen family. Lu Yanqing and Li Duxing also looked at him. They saw Yu Qianqiu pour out 2 elixirs in his hand. Then he opened the lips of Enchantress and Yenyu and put 1 elixir into their mouths. Then he forced the elixir into their abdomen to help them refine. When the elixir was gone, a faint red mist rose from the heads of the 2 women, with a slight smell of blood, and slowly dissipated in the air. Looking at the 2 women who were still in a coma, Yu Qianqiu was a little hesitant. He didn't know if it would work, so he tried to wake Enchantress up first. Enchantress woke up slowly. The first thing she saw was Yu Qianqiu, who was staring at her with wide eyes. Her eyes fell on Yu Qianqiu's head. She was stunned and said, "Why do you have so many braids on your head?" The people around looked at each other. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Then he patted his chest and said with a smile, well, it means you are good to say that." But at this moment, Enchantress suddenly exclaimed, Yan Zhuixing is here." She suddenly stood up. Yu Qianqiu turned around and said with a smile, "Don't worry, he has already left." As he spoke, he patted Yenyu to wake her up. The latter's reaction was almost exactly the same as Enchantress's. Yu Qianqiu immediately told the 2 of them what had happened. Only then did the 2 women let out a sigh of relief with lingering fear. Yu Qianqiu stretched his waist in a comfortable mood and sighed, "This trip was not in vain. I finally solved the problem." But before he put down his hand, a soft and fragrant body rushed into his arms and hugged him. She directly used her fragrant lips to block his mouth. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened. When he realized it was Yenyu, he quickly pushed her away. He frowned and said seriously, "Owner Yen, we are not that familiar with each other, right?" "Dead man. You still dare to lie to me." Yenyu was shy. She punched Yu Qianqiu's chest and then stuck her lips to Yu Qianqiu's without any scruples. Knowing that her sweetheart came from afar to save her, her heart was as sweet as drinking honey. Now she was ready to risk everything. She just wanted to kiss him at all costs, no matter where they were. Damn it. Since I've been exposed, I'm ready to risk everything. Yu Qianqiu hugged her tightly. They kissed passionately in front of everyone, which stunned the group of people. This action was a little out of touch with this era. Enchantress's smiling face hid a little loneliness. Li Duxing, Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing turned their heads to one side. Only Nongzhu's face was a little dark. No one could be happy to see their son-in-law kissing another woman in front of them. Enough! Don't you know where you are? Nongzhu finally couldn't help shouting angrily. They finally separated, breathing heavily. After looking at each other and smiling, all the grudges disappeared. They couldn't help kissing passionately again. After several times they stopped. Yenyu stared at him with a blushing face. She bit her attractive red lips and said, "Your braid is so ugly. Don't leave me alone again. I'll comb your braid." Ah. Yu Qianqiu raised her pink chin with a sinister smile and said, "I like it." Yenyu immediately punched him again. People beside them couldn't help shivering and felt goosebumps all over. When Lanfeng coughed and came over to disturb them with embarrassment. He said, "Yu Qianqiu, can you give me a refreshing pill?" When Rui hasn't removed the control of the magic eye yet. No problem. Yu Qianqiu was in a good mood. He took out a small bottle and poured out a pill for him. When Lan Feng carefully put it away as if he had received a treasure, Nongzhu came over with a sullen face. She stared at Wen Lan Feng and said seriously, "How is your injury?" "I think it's a big trouble. Let Lu Yen see it in the morning. If you need help, take advantage of the fact that everyone is here." She glanced at Yu Qianqiu and thought that this guy had a lot of treasures. He could even remove the control of the magic eye. Maybe he also had a panacea to save Wen Lan Feng. Yu Qianqiu, who was holding hands with Yan Yu and flirting, didn't know that Nongzhu had paid attention to him. When Lan Feng smiled bitterly and said, "The blood devil palm is really not simple. The blood in my body is about to solidify. Plus I was injured just now. I'm afraid there's no way to save it. I can't hold on for a few days. Don't bother anymore." Hearing that Wen Lan Feng was going to die, Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed to flirt with Yan Yu anymore. He looked at Wen Lan Feng with great sympathy and concern. Lu Yanqing, who was silent in sorrow, suddenly raised her head. It seemed that she just remembered that Wen Lan Feng had been hit by Yan Zhuixing's blood devil palm. She hurriedly grabbed Wen Lan Feng's hand and anxiously said, "There must be a way. There must be a way. I must have a way to cure you. I must be able to cure you." There was a tremble in her voice. It was the fear of losing the most precious thing. Wen Lan Feng looked at her quietly. This was the first time that she took the initiative to hold her hand. Although it was to check her injury, it could be seen that she still cared about her very much. Unknowingly, Wen Lan Feng's eyes became a little moist. He slowly turned his head to the side, and inadvertently 2 streaks of tears slid down his skinny cheeks. How many years of unwavering love, how many people laughed at him behind his back, but his sincerity had never wavered. For her, he could give up everything because in this world, there would never be anyone who would treat her better than himself. Today's scene was what he had dreamed of, and he had always hoped that one day she would take the initiative to hold his hand, but wasn't this day a little too late? If only he had a little more time to reminisce about this moment, it would have been good. Why did it have to happen when she was about to reach the end of her life? Fate was so cruel. People who had reached Wen Lan Feng's level of cultivation would naturally have some understanding of their own injuries. She estimated that she was almost there. Only Lu Yanqing, who was treating Wen Lan Feng, was anxiously murmuring, "I must be able to cure you. I must be able to cure you." Everyone else was silent. It seemed that they had even forgotten to breathe. They all noticed the tears on Wen Lan Feng's thin and dark face. This scene shocked everyone. Wen Lan Feng, a top expert in the cultivation world, was actually crying. Chapter 783. Wen Lan Feng raised his face as high as possible. He didn't want the tears on his face to fall, nor did he want Lu Yanqing to see it. Yes, Lu Yanqing really didn't see it now. She was burning with anxiety, and the only thing she was thinking about was how to cure Wen Lan Feng. She took out a set of instruments from the storage bag and pricked Wen Lan Feng's finger with a silver needle. For Yu Qianqiu it was like a test. However, Lu Yanqing didn't see it, but it didn't mean that others didn't see it. His head was raised higher and higher as he faced the sunlight, causing the tear stains and teardrops on his face to become more and more conspicuous. They sparkled and sparkled on his skinny and dark face, as clear as his heart towards Lu Yanqing, without any impurities in his eyes. Anyone who saw Wen Lan Feng at this time would be moved. The 2 women, Enchantress and Yan Yu, couldn't stand it anymore. They turned around quietly and sobbed secretly. Their silent tears were much stronger than Wen Lan Feng's. They kept wiping their tears but they couldn't dry them. The men were speechless. It seemed that they understood many things they didn't understand before at this moment. The bitterness in these 2 lines of tears was not something that outsiders could understand. Which of the men present didn't ridicule Wen Lan Feng in their hearts before? But these 2 lines of tears made them understand that Wen Lan Feng was not stupid. He knew what sarcasm was, and he knew that he was an idiot in the eyes of outsiders. However, his love was more persistent than anyone else. His love was purer than anyone else, and his love was more thorough than anyone else. He was determined to protect his true love. He would rather give up everything, even his own life, than let his beloved suffer a little grievance. Was this behavior stupid or not? Was it rational? Anyway, these men admitted that none of them could do it. But because of today they remembered what was called sincerity, an incomparable sincerity. Damn it! Why are you crying? You make me feel uncomfortable. Yu Qianqiu scratched his scalp with a strange expression. Li Duxing took a deep breath and slightly closed his eyes. His face looked more indifferent. Nongzhu looked at Lu Yanqing, who was getting more and more busy, and suddenly frowned. She seemed to have gradually lost her sense of propriety. She immediately shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Yanqing, what the hell are you doing? Can you cure the blood devil palm or not? If you can't, we'll think of something else. Wen Lanfeng doesn't have that much time for you to waste." Lu Yanqing shivered, and the thing in her hand fell to the ground. She squatted down and picked something up and said in a trembling voice, Can cure?" Nongzhu asked curiously, "If you can cure it, why are you still busy? Hurry up and treat it. If there's anything you need, just tell us. We'll think of a way to solve it." Wen Lanfeng took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention to him and quickly wiped away the tears on his face. He looked at Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "I guess there must be something difficult? Since that's the case, then forget it. There's no need to force yourself." "Bullshit. What do you mean by don't force yourself?" Nongzhu stared at Lu Yanqing and shouted, "Lu Yanqing, stand up and talk to me. What's going on?" Lu Yanqing slowly stood up, pinching the thing in her hand. It seemed that she was very hard and her knuckles had turned white. Under the repeated urging of Nongzhu, she finally said with a pale face, "Make a few elixirs and I'll cast a spell and then I can." She had been there all the time, but there had been no result, which made them very anxious. Nongzhu touched her forehead and did not know whether to laugh or cry. She said, "Can what? Tell me quickly. Is Wen Lanfeng's life so unbearable in your eyes?" The last sentence was a little heavy. Lu Yanqing immediately shook her head and then bit her lip and said, "Force out the blood in the body together with the suppressed blood devil palm, provided that we find two people with similar blood types to draw their blood for Wen Lanfeng. First, wash the whole body with blood and then change the whole body blood again." Nongzhu was stunned and doubted, "Is this method feasible? First wash and then change all the blood in Wen Lanfeng's body. How much blood will it take? Then, won't the blood of those two people be drained? Wouldn't it be exchanging two lives for one?" Now he vaguely knew why Lu Yanqing did not answer. This woman never killed people. What was the difference between this way of saving people and letting her kill people? There's really no need. Wen Lanfeng stared at Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "Yanqing, your master is famous. In this life, you uphold the medical ethics passed down by your master and only save people. Although you have cultivated until now, you have never killed a person, and I have never even heard of you fighting with anyone. You are like an orchid in an empty valley in this deep mountain. How can I let you kill? How can I let you feel uneasy for the rest of your life?" "Humph." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "Not necessarily. Didn't you see that she was alive and kicking and wanted to kill me?" Nongzhu said with a sullen face, "Why are you meddling?" "Fine." Yu Qianqiu said, "I won't meddle in this matter even if you ask me to." Wen Lanfeng smiled bitterly and stretched out his thin hands towards Lu Yanqing's shoulders. Just when he was about to touch them, he stopped in the air. He was used to holding Lu Yanqing when she was in a coma. Now that she was awake, he was afraid that she would be unhappy. After a moment of hesitation, seeing that Lu Yanqing did not object, he slowly put it on her shoulder. The man and the woman looked at each other and suddenly showed a knowing smile. Lu Yanqing suddenly said with certainty, "I can do it, I must do it, I will cure you." Wen Lanfeng put his hands on her fragrant shoulders and shook his head with a smile. "Your hands are the cleanest and most benevolent hands in the entire cultivation world. They are as pure as your heart. I won't let them be tainted by killing because of me." Lu Yanqing took his arm and said anxiously, "As long as I can save you, I am willing to do anything. But I refuse." Wen Lanfeng smiled and said, "I don't want you to feel guilty because of me." "That's bullshit." Nongzhu gritted her teeth and said, "Fine, you are all the kindest people in the cultivation world. We are all evil people." Then she turned around and said, "Yu Qianqiu, they all want to sacrifice themselves to be good people. Can you think of a way to help them?" Yu Qianqiu was also gritting his teeth. When he heard this, he was stunned and said, "How can I help them?" Nongzhu immediately pointed to Wen Lanfeng and said, "Think of a way to save him. Won't they save killing people?" Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes and said, "I don't know anything about the blood devil palm. How can I save him?" Nongzhu winked and gestured, "Do you have any elixirs? Like the spirit sobering pill just now?" "You're crazy. Do you think I run a pharmacy? Where did you get so many elixirs?" Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and snappily said, "No, you just told me not to get involved. You really don't want to save him?" Nongzhu said harshly. Yu Qianqiu immediately raised his eyebrows and sneered, "What? Do you want a one-on-one fight?" He was not afraid of Nongzhu now. He would fight with her anytime. You two don't worry about me. When Lanfeng stopped them and looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, Yu Qianqiu, I really want to ask you for a favor. I hope you can help me. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. If it was Nongzhu he would not mind arguing with her. But when Lanfeng, a dying man, was begging him, it was really hard for him to refuse. He smiled awkwardly and said, Forget it. You don't have to beg me. I'll try my best. No, you misunderstand. I don't want you to save my life. It's something else. As long as you can promise me this, I'd rather die than regret it. When Lanfeng smiled calmly and said, You're the only one in the world who can do this. Others may not be as good as you. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu looked at each other. The others were also confused. Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, What's the matter? I can't guarantee that I can do it. Tell me about it first. His old habit was to leave a way out for himself first. When Lanfeng said with a free and easy face, Lu Yanqing accidentally said that your music is unparalleled in the world. There are only a few people in the world who can get a song from you. Once it comes from you, it's a peerless masterpiece, enough to be sung for thousands of years. She is very envious of you. I hope you can also write a song for her. It's my last gift for her. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianqiu. Temptress was one of the people who knew Yu Qianqiu's attainments in this aspect. She could not help but show a very expectant look. Yan Yu's eyes were full of little stars. She had begun to plan in her heart to ask Yu Qianqiu to write a song for her. On the other hand, Yu Qianqiu's face turned green and twitched. After a long time he took a deep breath and said, Senior Wen, don't make things difficult for me. I'd better think of a way to heal your injuries. This is more important to me than curing my injury. It's my last wish. When Lanfeng sighed, Nongzhu immediately became furious and shouted, Wish my ass. When Lanfeng, you're out of your mind. What the hell are you talking about? All the people were speechless. Lu Yanqing anxiously pulled Wen Lanfeng and said, I just said it casually. Don't take it seriously. The most important thing is to cure your injury first. Yes. Damn. No wonder I felt it was familiar. Yu Qianqiu suddenly clapped his hands excitedly and shouted, attracting everyone's attention. He laughed and said, Senior Lu, the method of blood exchange you mentioned actually doesn't require people to die. Think about it. Why do you have to find 2 people? Can't you find 200 people? Everyone will be fine and we can save people. What do you think of this method? He suddenly thought of this method because he suddenly thought of the blood donation in his previous life. Wasn't it just gathering a little to make a lot? For people in this era, although the method was simple, the idea was very advanced. Generally, they would not think of this. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Lu Yanqing again, looking forward to her reply. Lu Yanqing's eyes lit up and she said in surprise, Of course it's possible. Why didn't I think of it? Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard that. They had finally found a way to make these 2 brainless men and women compromise. Nongzhu looked at Yu Qianqiu approvingly. He could see that as long as this guy was forced, he could always squeeze out a good solution to the problem. Chapter 784. Good. That's settled. Nongzhu waved her hand and said, With Lu Yanqing's medical skills, there should be no problem. As for finding hundreds of people to draw their blood, it's a piece of cake. In Baiwan Kingdom, as long as when Lanfeng asks, not to mention 200 people, even 20,000 people can be easily gathered. Lu Yanqing, why don't you go to Baiwan Kingdom with Wen Lanfeng? It's also convenient. Lu Yanqing nodded slightly. Her eyes swept over the once lush and beautiful Lingfang Valley, which had become a barren land, and a trace of sadness and gloom flashed through her eyes. Seeing that the matter had been resolved, Yu Qianqiu looked at the enchantress and Yanyu, and then looked at Immortal Crocodile standing alone on the mountain not far away. He said with relief, All right. Everyone disband and go about their own business. We're leaving too. He was about to greet Immortal Crocodile and return to the demon domain with the enchantress and Yanyu. Unexpectedly, when Lanfeng said, Wait. Yu Qianqiu, you still haven't replied to what I just asked of you? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He was speechless to meet such an unreasonable person. He was about to lose his life, but he still asked for a song. He was not only a love-struck fool but also an idiot. Nongzhu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She said, When Lanfeng, heal your injury first. It's not like we won't meet again in the future. Why are you in such a hurry now? When Lanfeng immediately transmitted his voice to Nongzhu, It's not that I'm unreasonable, but it's really rare to encounter such an opportunity. This guy has always been elusive. Who knows when we will find him again after we break up this time. What's more, I know that Lu Yanqing really likes his songs. If I don't take advantage of my injury now, it will be really inconvenient for me to ask for his help in the future. You should know that his current identity and cultivation are not what they used to be. You beat the drum, just treat it as helping Lu Yanqing realize this wish. Besides, you are also a musician. Don't you want to see for yourself whether this guy is really as talented as the legend says? He secretly transmitted his voice to Nongzhu, pretending to be in deep thought. Then he said slowly, Nongzhu, I know my own injury. Although Lu Yanqing's medical skills are extraordinary, anything can happen. What if I have an accident this time? Nongzhu stared at Wen Lanfeng, dumbfounded, and then looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange expression. Wen Lanfeng was right. He also wanted to see if this guy was really as talented as the rumors said in the cultivation world. But no matter how he looked at it, this guy looked like a hooligan. How could he be talented? Lu Yanqing did not know what Wen Lanfeng was thinking and comforted him. Don't worry. I'm sure I can cure you. Yu Qianqiu, who was a little speechless, immediately nodded and cooperated. Yes. Yes. Senior Lu will definitely be able to cure you, don't think too much about it. Wen Lanfeng said with a wry smile, Yu Qianqiu, is it so difficult for you to compose a song? The weather is unpredictable. Something really happens today will be the last time we meet. Do you really have the heart to let me leave with regrets? Damn it. Someone even cursed himself to have an accident. Yu Qianqiu found it hard to refuse him and couldn't help but hesitate. Nongzhu immediately coughed and said, Yu Qianqiu, all the right and wrong are in the past, but you can't forget one thing. She did help you before. You can decide what to do. I won't say more. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt something was wrong. He was watching Nongzhu's expression suspiciously. Suddenly, someone behind him poked him. Looking back, he found it was Yanyu. He could not help asking her what she wanted. Yanyu said seriously, Isn't Senior Wen asking for it for Senior Lu? If it's convenient for you, compose a song for Senior Lu. As he spoke, he turned to look at the Allure Beauty and continued, Let's not talk about this matter anymore. Senior Lu has always taken good care of us. The Allure Beauty immediately met Yu Qianqiu's gaze and nodded heavily. The reason why Yanyu tried so hard was that she wanted to see if her man was really talented. She was looking forward to it very much. The temptress was also looking forward to what new song Yu Qianqiu could compose. Damn it. Since when did I owe so many favors? Yu Qianqiu glanced at them and finally looked at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing a few more times, wondering which song he should choose that was more suitable for the two of them. What song should he choose? In contemplation, he paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. Sometimes he looked up to the sky and sometimes he bent down. The people around him suddenly became a little excited. Judging from Yu Qianqiu's behavior, he had undoubtedly agreed. Obviously he was preparing a good song. The temptress and Yanyu secretly looked at each other, and a smile quietly appeared on their faces. However, Nongzhu was still deeply doubtful. Was this guy for real? Could he compose a classic song in such a short time with his rascally look? How could a so-called classic be called a classic if it was not thoroughly tempered? At this moment, Yu Qianqiu's eyes suddenly stopped on a hillside in the distance, which was covered with weeds. It was so far away that he stared at it carefully. Amidst the lush green short grass, there was a beautiful Yu Beauty blooming alone. The bright red color contained a little black ink. It was very beautiful. It was the poppy flower that he was very familiar with in his previous life. It was swaying shyly in the wind. He could not help sighing inwardly, I used to plant it on a large scale in my previous life. Damn it. I was distracted. When he came back to his senses, he accidentally glanced at Lu Yanqing. He was stunned for a moment, and then he looked back at the flower and thought to himself. Got it. Now that he knew what to do, he began to act tough again. In his words, since he had already given his all, he had to perform well when it was time to do so. Otherwise he would have suffered a loss. He gazed at the Yu Beauty with a faint smile on his face. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, looking abnormally tall and straight. He exuded a scholarly aura, and he really did have the demeanor of a scholar. Everyone present looked at each other in dismay. They all felt as if he had suddenly become a different person, and the feeling he gave off was like the difference between heaven and earth. Nongzhu squinted her eyes and laughed in her heart. Is this guy for real? Everyone's gazes followed Yu Qianqiu's gaze to the distant hillside. Because the surrounding area had been plowed by the battle, the green on the hillside was exceptionally eye-catching, especially the Yu Beauty that was swaying shyly in the wind. Right at this moment, Yu Qianqiu flew over in a graceful manner and slowly descended on the hill. He stared silently at the flower for a while before he sat down cross-legged and casually took out a zither and placed it on his knees. Is it really starting? The enchantress and Yanyu immediately flew over, and Nongzhu also flew over with a smile. When Lanfeng called Lu Yanqing to fly together, Li Duxing could not help but run over to join in the fun. He had heard Yu Qianqiu's playing and singing in the ghost village and it was really not enough. Immortal Lord Crocodile had a strange expression on his face as he moved closer to the group. However, he was still a distance away from them. Under everyone's gaze, Yu Qianqiu smiled elegantly at the fresh flower in front of him. It was a very graceful thing to do, but with his braids, it made people feel awkward no matter how they looked at it. Nongzhu said, "Boy, can you do it? If you can't, don't pretend here." Yu Qianqiu continued to maintain his poise, feeling disinclined to pay him any attention. Once he provoked him, the two of them would start bickering, and that would definitely ruin the atmosphere that had been built up with great difficulty. He looked up at Wen Lanfeng and Lu Yanqing and said with a faint smile, "Since Senior Wen has spoken, I, Yu Qianqiu, will present a song called Woman Flower to you two seniors. Enjoy it carefully." Woman Flower? The few of them smacked their lips and looked at Lu Yanqing together. It was obvious that the name of the song was specially made for Lu Yanqing. There was a faint trace of envy in the eyes of Enchantress and Yanyu. When Lanfeng seemed to like the song very much. He happily looked at Lu Yanqing, who was silent, and then looked at Yu Qianqiu, his eyes full of expectation. Yu Qianqiu stretched out his hand and gently caressed the Yu beauty in front of him. When he retracted his hand, he had already played a gentle and beautiful tune on the strings of the zither. The melody was so unique that it instantly dispelled the doubts in everyone's hearts. It was as if in the blink of an eye, they were placed in a quiet and serene valley. Everyone's eyes involuntarily focused on the Yu beauty. Yu Qianqiu's fingers were nimble and light as he plucked the strings of the zither. When the melody entered a soft and quiet state, he had already begun to echo the heartstrings of the zither. He hoarsely sang, "I have a flower planted in my heart, budding and waiting to bloom. Day and night, I eagerly await the one who has the heart to enter my dream." The beginning of the song was heart-stirring. In the blink of an eye, everyone was surprised, but in the blink of an eye, they were comforted by the beautiful music. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianqiu in astonishment, her face full of disbelief. Lu Yanqing was the most moved. Her body trembled slightly, and the beginning of the song had already made her mood a little uncontrollable. Wasn't she singing her own heart? Yu Qianqiu stared at the Yu beauty affectionately and said, "Woman's flower, swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower, swaying gently in the wind. I only hope that there is a pair of gentle hands that can soothe the loneliness in my heart. I have a flower, the fragrance of the flowers fills the branches, who will sincerely seek traces of the fragrance. Flowers don't bloom for long, what can be broken must be broken, women are like flowers in a dream." Even if there was no flower in front of everyone at this time, there was already a flower in their minds, swaying gently in the wind, so lovely and touching. The sentence, "who will sincerely seek traces of the fragrance," immediately made Lu Yanqing bite her lips, almost unable to help herself. When Lanfeng's mind kept echoing the sentence, "Flowers don't bloom for long, what can be broken must be broken," tasting a trace of impulse, no need to hesitate to cherish the taste. Yu Qianqiu smiled and shook his head slowly and continued to sing, "I have a flower, growing in my heart, true love no one understands. Weeds have covered the hillside, the most heartache is to admire oneself. Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals, woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. I only hope that there is a pair of gentle hands that can soothe the loneliness in my heart. Woman's flower swaying in the world of mortals. Woman's flower swaying gently in the wind. If you smell the strong fragrance of the flower, don't ask me for whom the flower is red." This section of faint singing immediately caused everyone's eyes to once again focus on Lu Yanqing. Everyone seemed to understand her in an instant. It turned out that this woman's heart was so weak and helpless, so beautiful that it made people feel heartache. Nongzhu stared at Yu Qianqiu speechlessly. She couldn't imagine how this guy could understand women so well, especially Lu Yanqing so well. The sentence, "if you smell the strong fragrance of the flower, don't ask me for whom the flower is red," made Nongzhu's thoughts fly, and she returned to those indulgent times. Yu Qianqiu's voice suddenly became high-pitched. "After loving, one knows how heavy it is. After getting drunk, one knows how strong the wine is. Flowers bloom and wilt in the end. Fate does not stay, like the spring breeze comes and goes, women are like flowers in a dream. Fate does not stay, like the spring breeze comes and goes, women are like flowers in a dream, women are like flowers in a dream. Chapter 785. The mountain breeze blew gently, and the sound of the zither stopped faintly. Everyone stood there in a daze, and they were captivated by the final note. They were dazed, and they were unable to recover from it for a long time. Yu Qianqiu looked around and was very satisfied with the effect. His act of being a gentleman was not in vain. He put away the zither and bent down to pluck the shy beauty Yu. He sniffed it and walked to Wen Lanfeng with a smile, waving it in front of him. Wen Lanfeng came back to his senses and looked at Yu Qianqiu with eyes full of amazement. He bowed deeply and thanked him. I have long heard that Yu Qianqiu is talented, but I never believed it. Today I have seen it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. You are indeed worthy of your reputation. You flatter me. It's fine as long as it can satisfy Senior Wen. Yu Qianqiu stuffed the beauty Yu into his hand and patted it. He smiled and said, if you have smelled the fragrance of the flower, don't ask for whom the flower is red. You must know that women are like flowers, flowers are like dreams, there is no need to hesitate. I wish Senior Wen's lover a happy ending. Wen Lanfeng nodded excitedly and said, thank you. He then strode to Lu Yanqing and presented the flower in his trembling hands. He did not dare to look into Lu Yanqing's eyes. Only when his hands were empty did he dare to raise his head to look at her. Lu Yanqing held the beauty Yu in her fingers and sniffed it with a depressed expression. Who knew that she would gently walk to Yu Qianqiu and stare at Yu Qianqiu with her clear eyes and ask, who do you think can understand the loneliness in my heart? Why did she go to ask him? Everyone's eyes flickered with suspicion. Yu Qianqiu's face stiffened. He immediately shook his head and said, I really don't understand. He then pointed to Wen Lanfeng and said, Senior Wen is a man with a heart, he will definitely understand. Lu Yanqing's eyes flashed with a trace of undetectable desolation, and said with a faint smile, I have always been very curious, what kind of world is Yu Qianqiu's world, can you tell me? The enchantress and Yan Yu looked at each other. Nongzhu's mouth was slightly open, and Wen Lanfeng's chest was rising and falling rapidly. Li Duxing closed his eyes slightly. Immortal Crocodile, who was not far away, looked at him with burning eyes. Yu Qianqiu paused and secretly glanced at Wen Lanfeng. Then he laughed and said, my world is wonderful and exciting. It's hard for ordinary people to adapt to it. Just like the flower in Senior Lu's hand, it was only suitable to grow in this secluded valley, waiting for a sincere person to pluck it. On the other hand, the mortal world outside would only tarnish it and make it lose its original fragrance. Then it would no longer be it. Two different worlds could only exist side by side, but they could never intersect. Therefore there is no need for Senior Lu to explore my world. Lu Yanqing looked at the flower in her hand and said with a faint smile, but it was you who plucked it just now. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. Suddenly he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, Senior Lu, I'm a crude man. I'm more interested in the topic of having sex with women. Flowery topics really don't suit me. You should find someone who understands. Then he said to the enchantress Yan Yu, Immortal Crocodile, and Nongzhu, the matter here is over and we should go. Then he cupped his hands and said to the others, goodbye. After that he took the lead and flew away. The people he called immediately followed him, and even Nongzhu did not say a word. The sky was high and the clouds were thin, and the earth was boundless with mountains. There was still a slight breeze blowing through the mountains. On the hillside, there were 3 people standing quietly amidst the lush green weeds. Lu Yanqing, who now had short hair, stared blankly at the horizon where Yu Qianqiu and the others had disappeared. She softly and tactfully murmured, fate does not stop. Like the spring breeze that comes and goes. Women are like flowers in a dream, women are like flowers in a dream. In the sky, the group of people flew quickly in the direction of the South Sea purple bamboo forest. Immortal Crocodile, who had the highest cultivation, was following behind, and Yu Qianqiu was flying slowly in front, listlessly. Nongzhu flashed to his side, coughed and said, well, Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu suddenly turned around and interrupted, I know what you want to say, but I don't want to talk to you now, and don't ask me anything. Nongzhu ignored him and sneered, I know what you think I want to say to you, but it is not what you think. I just want to praise your good singing. You have deceived many women with your singing, haven't you? *CK. I lied to you. Yu Qianqiu was so angry that he turned around and flew backward. He pointed at them and said angrily, I said I wasn't going to sing, but you guys just had to instigate me to sing. Now look at you, singing caused trouble, didn't you? Nongzhu sneered, the most beautiful woman in the world. You must be proud of yourself, aren't you? I don't have anything in common with you, so don't talk to me. Yu Qianqiu warned and turned back to fly. The Allure Beauty and Yan Yu looked at each other in dismay. The former gave the latter a meaningful glance, and Yan Yu tacitly understood and flew to Yu Qianqiu's side. She said in astonishment, "The song just now was very nice. What happened when he sang? Why didn't I recognize it?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and tilted his head with a suspicious look. Yan Yu ignored him, hugged his arm and said coquettishly, "When are you going to give me a song? Is that okay?" Yu Qianqiu's spirit was immediately roused when he touched Yan Yu's ample bosom with his elbow. His gloomy face instantly brightened up, and all his worries were thrown out of the window. He winked at her bosom and said, "Do you really want it?" Yan Yu nodded solemnly. Yu Qianqiu immediately smiled like a fox that had stolen a chicken and promised, Okay, sure. Find a place where there is no one, and I will sing 18 touches for you." "Really?" Yan Yu said with surprise. Yu Qianqiu moved his elbow and said with a smile, "Of course." Yan Yu saw that he was unhappy, so she came to cheer him up. She didn't expect that Yu Qianqiu would really promise to give her a song, so she was really overjoyed. She didn't expect that his words were full of dirty meaning, and she hugged him more tightly in joy. Yu Qianqiu's face was full of smile. Happiness is always more important than trouble. The night in the South Sea purple bamboo forest was especially charming. Tonight, the purple bamboo forest was filled with the laughter of women. As the saying goes, 3 women make a play, and it is lively when they are together. Purple Dress was very happy to have a companion, and she fully displayed the spirit of a host and welcomed them warmly. The 3 women chattered almost endlessly and all the men stood aside. There should have been 4 women, but unfortunately, Farong had taken the limit-breaking pill, and was still in a stiff stage. This also made Yu Qianqiu a little nervous, worried that Farong wouldn't be able to accept Yan Yu's appearance when she woke up. He asked Yan Yu in return, and she seemed very generous, showing that she didn't care how many women he had, but was afraid that others would dislike her because of her poor background. It could be seen that she was a little worried that Farong wouldn't accept her. Yu Qianqiu could only comfort her out of kindness. After all, now that things had come to this, he had to slowly try to make them get along, and they couldn't not see each other for the rest of their lives, right? It was the first time that Yu Qianqiu saw the night view of the purple bamboo forest. At night, the forest was filled with misty spiritual qi, which could be said to be quite dense, and all of it was emitted by the purple bamboo. This made Yu Qianqiu feel a little strange. Plants could actually emit spiritual qi, and when he asked Nongzhu, he also didn't know the answer. However, the most strange thing was that the joints of the branches of the purple bamboo were actually glowing with a faint purple light, which couldn't be seen in the daytime. Under the night sky, looking at the bamboo forest, there were dots of soft purple light everywhere, and when a gust of night wind blew, the purple light swayed, and it was very beautiful. Yu Qianqiu made a net bed and found a place where the bamboo was sparser and pulled it up, lying on it, biting the bamboo leaves and looking at the stars. The sky was full of stars, and with the purple light swaying around him, a gust of wind blew, and Yu Qianqiu swayed on the net bed, feeling like he was in a dream. This place was so beautiful that it was a little unreal, and he was really envious of Nongzhu for finding such a good place to live. If only I could live like this leisurely for the rest of my life. He couldn't help but let out a sigh with his arm behind his head. What are you sighing about? Immortal Crocodile, who didn't mix with others, suddenly appeared beside him. Yu Qianqiu tilted his head and smiled at him. Seeing that he was stroking the bamboo next to him, he couldn't help but sit up and ask curiously, "Old monster, is there such bamboo in the celestial world?" Immortal Crocodile touched the bamboo joint that was emitting a soft purple light, looked around and slowly shook his head. "I've never seen or heard of such a magical bamboo. Not only does it emit light, but it can also emit spiritual qi, which is really incredible. I didn't expect such a good thing to exist in the world." "Even you haven't heard of it?" Yu Qianqiu looked around and his expression became serious. It should be known that Immortal Crocodile's experience was among the best in the celestial world, and he himself regarded him as a know-it-all. Who would have thought that even he didn't know about it? This was a bit unusual. Could it be a natural treasure? "When are you going to leave?" Immortal Crocodile suddenly asked. Yu Qianqiu came back to his senses, looked at the chatting women and sighed. Some people are destined to be happy and some people are destined to pay. Let's do it now. With that said, he jumped off the net bed and the two walked into the depths of the bamboo forest. In the Inn of Lust City, Yu Qianqiu left Immortal Crocodile's room and went straight to the door of Boli's room. He pushed the door and found that it was indeed not locked. These natives were used to staying in the tribe, and had no habit of locking their doors. He closed the door, walked to the bedside and kicked Boli, who was sleeping soundly, awake. When Boli saw him, he immediately asked where he had been, as he hadn't seen him for the past few days. Yu Qianqiu smiled slightly. He realized that this fellow seemed to have gained a lot of weight after not seeing him for a few days. It seemed like he was living a good life. He didn't say much and got Boli to find the other tribesmen. After everyone arrived, he asked them in detail about their experiences over the past few days, and there was nothing unusual. He sent them to Utopia and let them meet their tribesmen. He sat by Boli's bed and fell silent for a while. His gaze gradually deepened, and he instantly made a decision. If Huang Tian still hadn't found any news about the purple flames, he wasn't prepared to wait any longer. He didn't have the patience to wait any longer. Chapter 786. In the underground palace under the city Lord Manor's garden, Yu Qianqiu directly burrowed into the ground. After looking around, his eyes landed on the dirt ball on the table in the center. Every time Huang Tian left this place, he would gather a dirt ball here in case Yu Qianqiu came to find him. Yu Qianqiu walked straight to the table and broke the dirt ball. He sat on the chair and waited quietly. Not long after, Huang Tian came through the wall with a bad expression. As he walked over, he asked, "Where have you been these days? I haven't seen you in the entire Yellow Sand City, and you haven't come to find me." Yu Qianqiu waited for him to sit down before asking, "It doesn't matter where I went. How's the news about the purple flames?" Huang Tian raised his hand and stopped him. He frowned and sighed. "Don't ask about the purple flames for now. The Immortal City is in a mess now. It's not good to ask about it. It's not too late to ask after things stabilize. Don't run around during this period in case something happens." Yu Qianqiu sized him up and asked curiously, "You don't look too good. Did something happen in the Immortal City?" Huang Tian sighed softly. "Immortal Lord Night Owl and 2 Netherworld generals are dead. Immortal Lord Dancing Ji is also heavily injured. Everyone in the Immortal City is in danger, afraid that the madman will appear again. Who has the mood to help me ask about the purple flames?" Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened. He could not sit still anymore. He stood up and asked in disbelief, "You mean the madman who challenged the Immortal Lord last time appeared again? He even killed Immortal Lord Night Owl and 2 Netherworld generals?" "That's right." Huang Tian shook his head and sighed. "I don't know where this person came from. Not only is he getting stronger the more he fights, his cultivation is also improving at a godly speed. This time, the 2 Immortal Lords and the 2 Netherworld generals had joined forces to capture him and interrogate him about the way to enter and exit the Heaven and Earth Jianghu formation. Who knew that he who had been injured by the 2 Immortal Lords last time, would appear this time, with the exception of Immortal Lord Jiwu, the other 3 were all dead. It's really hard to imagine, what kind of cultivation method can increase one's cultivation so quickly in this world." Yu Qianqiu sucked in a breath of cold air and sat down on the ground. He knew that Bai Changchun was fierce, but he didn't expect him to be so strong that he couldn't believe it. "How long has it been? He actually killed 3 immortal monarchs? Are you sure this news is true?" Yu Qianqiu gulped and asked. Frowning, Huang Tian snapped, "Do you think I would joke about something like that?" As he spoke, he stood up and said, "The fence gathering is over. I still have things to arrange. We'll continue to inquire about the purple flame after the situation has cleared up. Everyone don't be anxious. It's better to be careful." "Wait." Yu Qianqiu stopped Huang Tian, who was about to leave. He walked closer and asked, "Tell me the truth, what happened at the fence gathering? What did the warriors that were sent to the Immortal City do?" Huang Tian shook his head and said, "I'm not too sure about the specifics. I only know that most of them were sent to mine spirit stones. After all, spirit stones are extremely difficult to mine, and those with weak physiques can't handle it. Some of them were directly taken away by Immortal Lord Night Owl. I don't think many people know what they're doing." Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Then why did they keep some people in the fence gathering, and let most of them live in the most primitive state? Aren't you quite smart? I've already made it so clear, why can't you figure it out?" Huang Tian said disdainfully, "Spirit stone mines are extremely difficult to mine, and they need people with strong physiques. Didn't you realize that the primitive natives' bodies are stronger than the people in the fence gathering? The natives are raised for manual labor, while the people raised in captivity are raised so that the immortal cultivators don't have to live like barbarians and eat raw meat. Everyone is locked up in the Heaven and Earth universe formation, so they have to find some fun, right? Otherwise they'll suffocate to death. After saying that, he pointed at Yu Qianzhou's head as if to say that he was a blockhead. Then he turned and left. Raised in captivity? Yu Qianzhou was stunned on the spot. Those two words made him speechless. He didn't expect the immortals here to raise humans like animals. He sighed and shook his head slightly. He knew that there was nothing he could do about it. These immortals were used to being high and mighty, so why would they care about mortals? In their eyes, mortals were no different from animals. It was good enough that they raised them and didn't kill them. As he thought about it, his thoughts returned to Bai Changchun. He realized that the old fellow really lived up to his title as the #1 expert in the world. He was so strong that he was perversely strong, and wherever he went he killed. Just as he thought about it, his eyes suddenly opened. He faintly felt that the old fellow was about to leave and probably wouldn't come back to the East Holy Land. Think about it, the old fellow killed 3 of the 2 immortal monarchs and 2 netherworld generals in the East Holy Land, and these 4 were the ones with the highest cultivation in the East Holy Land. With the old fellow's personality, the East Holy Land probably couldn't interest him anymore. The next step would probably be. Just as he thought about it, he was stunned again as he felt Lady Mu's summon. He frowned slightly, not knowing what was going on. In a flash, he charged into the mud wall and disappeared. Once he appeared on Obedient Island, Yu Qianzhou looked around but didn't find anything strange. Lady Mu, who was not far away, had already noticed him. She quickly walked towards him and bowed, saying, "Mr. Old Lord is back." The old lord she was talking about was naturally Bai Changchun. Yu Qianzhou immediately teleported back into the house, but he saw that it was empty. There was no sign of Bai Changchun at all. When he turned and walked to the door, he saw Lady Mu rushing over. He immediately shouted in a low voice, "What's going on?" Lady Mu immediately replied fearfully, "Mr. Please listen to me first. Old Lord has indeed returned just now, and he even asked me about you. I wanted to ask you to come back, but Old Lord said there was no need for that. After he walked around the island for a while, he left. Once he left, I felt that I should tell you about it immediately, so I immediately came to find you. In fact, Old Lord has just left almost right after you." With a flash, Yu Qianzhou appeared on the roof outside. He looked around at the Obedient Island that was still the same as before and let out a sigh. It seemed that his guess was right. The old man was really going to leave. He came back this time to take one last look at the Obedient Island that he had stayed in for 1,000 years. It was likely that he would never return after leaving. The human world could no longer keep such a heaven-defying character, and such a heaven-defying character should no longer stay in the human world. This was his destiny. "Lady Mu, which direction did Old Lord go?" Yu Qianzhou suddenly shouted from the roof. He thought that Bai Changchun might have something to tell him when he came back. Lady Mu immediately stretched out her hand and pointed in the air, saying, "Old Lord went in that direction." Yu Qianzhou followed her finger and saw that it was in the direction of Chilly Wind Valley. As he expected, the old man should have gone to the netherworld through the 9th netherworld cave. Then he asked again, "You mean Old Lord has just left?" Lady Mu immediately replied, "That's right. It happened almost right after you came back. He might even make it in time." Yu Qianzhou instantly disappeared from the roof, and after appearing in a remote area of Utopia, he immediately closed his eyes and sensed Bai Changchun's movements. Judging from the direction, Bai Changchun should have just entered the 9th netherworld cave. So fast. Yu Qianzhou opened his eyes in shock. He did not expect Bai Changchun to enter the 9th netherworld cave so quickly. It had only been a while since he left the Obedient Island. The old man's cultivation was indeed terrifyingly high. Without another word, he disappeared on the spot. In order to stop Bai Changchun, he simply teleported and appeared in front of the netherworld gate. The moment he appeared, he immediately sized up the eerie and terrifying surroundings. After all, the netherworld envoy had appeared here previously, and he did not know if there would be any danger. In the huge underground space, the netherworld fire sea was still burning fiercely, and the black miasma lingering in the sky surged. The group of skulls on the walls of the netherworld Iron Mountain were still as ferocious as ever, and the majestic netherworld gate did not move. The feeling this place gave off was still as shocking as ever, and it seemed like nothing had changed. The saw mark he had left on the netherworld gate was still there, and the missing knocker had not been replaced. It seemed like there was no danger. At this moment, someone behind him suddenly said, "Why are you here?" "Who is it?" Yu Qianzhou was shocked. He turned around and saw Bai Changchun, who was dressed in a green robe, looking at him in surprise. He immediately patted his chest with lingering fear and said, "Master, why didn't you make a sound? You'll scare people to death in this place." Bai Changchun looked around and asked curiously again, "Why are you here? What are you trying to get?" Yu Qianqiu patted his chest and heaved a sigh of relief. He replied, "When I just returned to Shuntian Island, I heard from Lady Mu that you had returned and left. I asked in which direction you went and guessed that you were coming here, so I came here to wait for you." Bai Changchun nodded slightly, indicating that he understood. Then he walked with his hands behind his back and quietly sized up the surroundings. Yu Qianqiu followed behind him and asked with a smile, "Master, I heard that you killed a celestial monarch and 2 netherworld generals in the East Holy Land, and even injured a celestial monarch. Is this true?" Bai Changchun replied with an N, and as he looked around he said indifferently, "I wanted to kill them all, but after thinking about it, I left one alive for you. Maybe you'll need such an expert to practice with in the future, so that you can prepare to explore the immortal and netherworld realms in the future." Yu Qianqiu, who was following behind him, paused. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he followed up again. He said, "Master, you think too highly of me. You actually left an celestial monarch expert for me to practice with. I guess I won't be able to use her, her level is really too high. Don't compare me with you. I don't care if I can use her or not. Maybe there'll be a day where I can use her. It's better to be prepared now than not. Besides, there's no point in me killing her anymore. The Holy East Land needs a leader to intimidate the small fry. Otherwise, once chaos breaks out, the ones who will suffer will be those mortals," Bai Changchun said in a carefree manner. Chapter 787. Ah! Master has a benevolent and compassionate heart. It is truly a blessing for all living beings in this world to have Master presiding over it. Why don't you just stay?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled and flattered. Bai Changchun was indifferent to his flattery. Expressionlessly, he stared at the mountain wall made of skeletons, which looked as if they were alive. Then he slowly said, "No one can protect the human world for generations to come. The way of heaven has its own rules. If the heavens have feelings, they will grow old. The right path of the human world is full of vicissitudes. The things that should be experienced can never be avoided. I should have left long ago." He tried to persuade him again, but to no avail. Yu Qianqiu simply shut up. He knew that since the old man had come to the underworld gate, there was no use in persuading him. He silently accompanied Bai Changchun, accompanying him to inspect the underground space that was different from the human world. In the huge space that flickered, the master and disciple slowly walked to the front of the majestic underworld gate. Even with Bai Changchun's high cultivation, standing in front of the gate gave people a feeling of insignificance. Separated by a gate, the difference between the human world and the netherworld made Bai Changchun, who had his hands behind his back, feel a little emotional. Bai Changchun stared at the portraits of men, women, old, and children painted on the door for a long time. He carefully observed them over and over again. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. In the end, he slowly closed his eyes and furrowed his brows, as if he was contemplating something. Yu Qianqiu was a little curious. He also looked at the carvings on the gate but didn't see anything unusual. After a long time, Bai Changchun slowly opened his eyes and gazed at the gate again. He stared at the heaven-swallowing beast's head that was missing a knocker. Then he looked back at Yu Qianqiu meaningfully and said, "This gate contains the truth of the great Tao. It's extremely profound. I'm afraid it's not something that the Underworld Emperor or the Immortal Emperor could build. I don't know how long it's been guarding here. Since it was destroyed by your hands, I'm afraid you'll have to give it a perfect ending." These words were very mysterious. Yu Qianqiu was confused and scratched his head. "Give it a perfect ending? Master, what do you mean?" "All things in the cycle of reincarnation have a beginning and an end. The end is the beginning and the beginning is the end. This is called reincarnation and perfection," Bai Changchun explained. *CKme. What the hell? Why was it even more mysterious than what he had said before? The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He nodded with a silly smile. Actually, he didn't understand a single word. He was just pretending to understand. He didn't want to ask any more. The answers he received were getting more and more mysterious. It was easy for the speaker, but it was hard for him to listen. However, not long after Bai Changchun said these words, the entire underground space immediately produced many chaotic echoes of different heights, but they were all repeating Bai Changchun's words. The portraits of men, women, old, and children on the underworld gate seemed to have come to life in an instant. They were reciting along with Bai Changchun, and their voices echoed in the huge underground space. The lifeless airflow in the underground space instantly became restless, whistling wildly. The flames in the netherworld flame sea suddenly rose and fiercely burned, seeming extremely mysterious and strange. Yu Qianqiu looked around dumbfoundedly. If these words didn't come from Bai Changchun's mouth, if Bai Changchun wasn't still by his side, if Bai Changchun's expression was still calm, he would have already teleported away. The netherworld flame sea that was burning fiercely gradually calmed down. When the strange scene in the underground space calmed down again, Yu Qianqiu finally let out a sigh of relief. He looked at Bai Changchun with eyes full of worship. This old fellow's cultivation was really high, so high that it was unfathomable. He even knows how to use spells to heighten the atmosphere. This is an expert. It's worth learning, it's worth learning. Suddenly his eyes popped out. His expression was like he had seen a ghost as he stared at the underworld gate. Originally, the portraits of men, women, old, and children on the gate had all kinds of strange expressions. Happiness, anger, sorrow, and happiness were all there, depicting all kinds of life. However, at this moment, the expressions of the portraits of men, women, old, and children on the gate had all turned into smiles. Each and every one of them revealed a satisfied smile, as if they had been enlightened by Buddha and had already escaped from the sea of bitterness. This. Yu Qianqiu's mouth opened so wide that his fist could be stuffed inside. He pointed at the underworld gate, bewildered, and pointed again and again, asking Bai Changchun to quickly look. However, Bai Changchun's expression was indifferent, as if he didn't care at all. Yu Qianqiu closed his mouth and quickly rubbed his eyes. He thought that he was hallucinating, but in the end, the smiling faces on the underworld gate were still there. He swallowed his saliva and ran to the front of the gate to touch it. It seemed like it was real and not an illusion. Oh my God! Yu Qianqiu stumbled back a few steps in succession. Turning his head back to look at Bai Changchun, he pointed at the netherworld gate with a backhand and said with a sheepish smile, "And master, why your cultivation is really high, too high." He simply couldn't believe it. Just a few words could change the expressions of the people on the underworld gate. Moreover, it was so lifelike without a trace. This cultivation was just too terrifying. Was he still human? He was simply a god. Move aside. Bai Changchun said lightly. Yu Qianqiu gave an "oh" sound and quickly moved to the side. Bai Changchun stretched out his hand that was behind his back and pushed the underworld gate in front of him. Yu Qianqiu immediately felt a majestic aura rush out, gently but powerfully pushing the underworld gate. With a rumbling sound, a crack appeared on the majestic underworld gate, and an eerie aura immediately blew out from the crack. The airflow in the underground space instantly became incomparably chaotic, and the netherworld flame crazily danced. As the crack on the gate became wider and wider, a dense cold wind blew out from inside and swept through the underground space. The light flickered rapidly. Even with Yu Qianqiu's current cultivation, it was a little hard for him to stay where he was. He quickly held the underworld tablet next to the underworld gate. After the gate was opened to about a meter wide, Bai Changchun faced the strong wind and slowly walked out as if he was taking a leisurely stroll. Yu Qianqiu knew that Bai Changchun was about to leave the human world and head to the underworld. After a series of complicated expressions, he suddenly shouted, "Master, do you have anything else to say to this disciple?" As the strong wind blew, Bai Changchun turned around and stared at him with bright eyes. He indifferently smiled and said, "Walk your own path. Don't let me down." A short sentence couldn't be considered an explanation. After he finished speaking, he resolutely turned around and didn't stop at all. His body turned into a ray of green light and disappeared into the black whirlpool behind the underworld gate. After he entered the underworld gate, it closed with a rumble, until it was seamless. The entire underground space gradually returned to its calm state. Yu Qianqiu looked at the closed underworld gate in a daze. He seemed to be in a daze. He couldn't understand why parting was always unavoidable in life. He suddenly clenched his fist and shouted, "Master, I definitely won't let you down. You will see it in the future, I will definitely let you see it." These words seemed to have been said a little too late. It seemed like he should have said it before Bai Changchun left. However, this shout seemed to have used up all of his strength. He weakly leaned against the underworld tablet and slid to the ground. There was no sadness of parting on his face, only a lonely smile. He sat there alone and shook his head with a faint smile as he recalled the past between the master and disciple. He sat there alone for a very long time. When he woke up again, his emotional side was once again restrained. He had a shrewd expression on his face as he jumped up. No one knew what he thought of, but he directly dove into the netherworld flame sea and appeared at the entrance of the netherworld cave. He stared at the cave wall and found the inscription on the wall. "Damn it." The old man has gone to the netherworld realm to stir up trouble. I hope he doesn't come up with some netherworld envoy who wants to find me by name. Yu Qianqiu muttered to himself. He found the words that he had inscribed on the wall. Then he covered his palm with a green flame and rubbed it against the wall a few times, erasing all his words. After seeing Nongzhu's inscription, he originally didn't want to care about it. Maybe one day he could see Nongzhu's excitement. However, after thinking about it, if something happened to Nongzhu, he would inevitably be implicated. Therefore, he completely destroyed Nongzhu's inscription and Bai Changchun's. After doing all this, he looked along the winding netherworld cave and suddenly thought of Yu Ji outside. He remembered that he had promised her that if he had the ability, he would help her leave the Demon Spectre region. Now that Bai Changchun was gone, the Demon Spectre region was completely under his control. If he let a ghost cultivator out, he could be sure that there would not be any trouble. It was time to fulfill his promise. He disappeared directly. When he appeared in the chilly Wind Valley, it immediately caused a commotion among the ghost cultivators. He hadn't announced the succession of the Demon Domain Torture Master in the Demon Domain, mainly because he didn't want to cause a commotion in the Demon Domain. Now he didn't have time to take care of the Demon Domain every day, so it was good to continue to use the old guy's prestige to deter people. Even so, everyone in the chilly Wind Valley knew that he was above tens of thousands of people in the Demon Domain, so they were very respectful. Yu Qianqiu asked if Yu Ji was there. As a result, Yu Ji and other key figures in the chilly Wind Valley were checking the entrance of the Netherworld cave because of the change. Yu Qianqiu asked someone to find Yu Ji and said that he had something to talk to her alone. A ghost cultivator immediately went to report. He directly entered the Ghost King's hall without any hindrance and went straight to Yu Ji's throne and sat down. Almost at the same time when he sat down, Yu Ji had already flashed in quickly. She quickly walked to the throne and bowed, saying, "Greetings, sir." Sitting on the throne, Yu Qianqiu looked at the charming Yu Ji with a smile and asked lightly, "Yu Ji, do you remember a promise I made to you when I first met you in General Meng? Now it's time for me to fulfill this promise." Yu Ji's delicate body trembled. She looked at him and bit her lips tightly, looking very excited. It seemed that she didn't expect that this day would really come. However, when she looked around the empty Ghost King's hall, she was stunned, and her face gradually became gloomy. She slowly knelt down in front of Yu Qianqiu and said with a lonely smile, "Thank you, sir." At first, Yu Ji wanted to leave with the general, but now the general is gone. No matter how colorful the outside world is, Yu Ji doesn't want to enjoy it alone. Chapter 788. Yu Qianqiu left Ill Wind Valley and returned to Lust City's inn. Previously, under his repeated inquiries, Yu Ji finally rejected his good intentions. She did not want to abandon Meng Yan's old subordinates, and decided to continue being her Ghost King. Yu Qianqiu did not expect this female ghost to be so loyal. He had underestimated her. Now he felt that this woman could be used, but it depended on whether there was a chance. At the same time, Bai Changchun's departure affected him greatly. Seeing the gap between him and his master widening, he was even more determined to work hard. Just as he said in front of the Netherworld gate, he hoped that he would not disappoint Bai Changchun when he saw him again. After knocking on Immortal Lord Crocodile's door, Yu Qianqiu closed the door and walked straight to Immortal Lord Crocodile, who was sitting cross-legged, and said indifferently, "Come, let's go to the Immortal City." Immortal Lord Crocodile was startled. What's wrong? He did not know why this fellow who always talked about safety, decided to take the risk. This Huang Tian is a small character in the East Holy Land. I don't know how long it will take for him to help me find information about the Purple Fire. I can't wait. Yu Qianqiu's gaze was resolute. Let's take the initiative and go to the Immortal City. There should be people there who know. Immortal Lord Crocodile pondered for a moment. With my current cultivation, if something happens to the Immortal City, I might not be able to protect you. Don't worry, I can protect you, Yu Qianqiu said with a chuckle. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and sneered. Protect me? Are you kidding? If that's the case, why drag me along? You can go by yourself. Yu Qianqiu said shamelessly, if you can't beat us, then run. Did you forget that we can leave the East Holy Land? Immortal Lord Crocodile was speechless. He slowly said, I advise you not to take this risk. There are many experts in the Immortal City. I can hide my identity from others, but I can't hide it from Yi Xiao and Ji Wu. With their cultivation, I'm afraid they can see through me at a glance. All Ji Wu? Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and sneered. I almost forgot to tell you. Yi Xiao and the two Netherworld generals hiding underground have already been killed by my master. That Jiwu was also severely injured by my master. She was lucky to survive. How would she have the time to visit you? What? Immortal Crocodile stood up abruptly and exclaimed, "Are you telling the truth?" Cut the crap. Let's talk on the way. Yu Qianqiu threw out a few silver balls and glanced at him. Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes out of habit. When the two of them reappeared, they were already on a yellow plain outside the city. This was the place where Yu Qianqiu had been cultivating his earth formula. The two of them didn't know where the immortal city was. Back then, Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't have a so-called immortal city in the Holy East Lands. Fortunately, when Yu Qianqiu was chatting with Huang Tian, he had kept an eye out and figured out where the immortal city was. It should be in the center of the Holy East Lands. After the two of them determined their direction, they quickly flew toward the center of the Holy East Lands. Along the way, under Immortal Lord Crocodile's strong request, Yu Qianqiu roughly told him about Bai Changchun's glorious feat of killing Owl Ji, shocking Immortal Lord Crocodile. When Yu Qianqiu casually mentioned that Bai Changchun had already gone to the Netherworld realm, Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. There was a hint of admiration in his solemn expression. He didn't think that he had underestimated Bai Changchun's strength. Based on Bai Changchun's ability to defeat 2 immortal lords and 2 netherworld generals, it was obvious that even if his cultivation was at its peak, he wouldn't be Bai Changchun's match. As they flew, Immortal Lord Crocodile also confirmed his guess. Yu Qianqiu's cultivation had indeed reached the soul formation stage. This left Immortal Lord Crocodile speechless. The master and disciple's cultivation speed was too abnormal. After flying out of the vast yellow plains, they immediately entered a primeval forest that stretched as far as the eye could see. The two of them didn't dare to be ostentatious, afraid that they would be discovered. Thus they tried to fly close to the treetops in the valleys of the mountains. If anything happened, it would be convenient for them to hide. The mountains rose and fell, the green forest was like a wash, and the landscape was like a painting. Along the way, Immortal Lord Crocodile remained vigilant, and Yu Qianqiu also became more interested in enjoying the scenery of the forest. However, just as he was enjoying the view, Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly pulled him into the dense forest below. As soon as they landed, Yu Qianqiu immediately held his breath and focused. He knew that Immortal Lord Crocodile wouldn't do this for no reason. He must have discovered something. Without another word, he pointed his finger and immediately burrowed into the ground with Immortal Lord Crocodile. The surface of the ground slowly returned to normal as the two of them dove into the ground. It could be said that Yu Qianqiu used the same trick again. The two of them hid under a small slope, revealing 2 small holes under the luxuriant weeds for the two of them to observe the movements outside. After waiting underground for a while, Yu Qianqiu didn't discover anything. He couldn't help but ask via voice transmission, "Old monster, what did you discover?" In the end, before he could finish speaking, they heard the sound of intense fighting coming from afar. Even the hole that the two of them were hiding in was shaking. Mud and sand fell, covering the two of them with a layer of soil. Such a big movement could be heard from so far away. One could only imagine that the cultivation level of the people fighting was not low. Yu Qianqiu immediately used the earth art to strengthen the soil around them, preventing them from being buried alive. The sounds of the fierce battle lasted for a long time before it died down. After waiting for a while, Yu Qianqiu asked via voice transmission, "Old monster, the fight seems to be over. Can we go out and continue on our way?" Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly frowned and stretched out his index finger to make a silent gesture. He closed his eyes and listened. Without hesitation, Yu Qianqiu immediately stuck his head against the mud wall, narrowed one eye, and blindly looked out of the hole. He saw the branches and leaves of a few trees in front of him rustling, and a beautiful figure came out and landed directly on the ground. After stumbling and holding onto the tree trunk, she quickly looked around vigilantly. Yu Qianqiu's narrowed eyes instantly lit up. This was a graceful woman dressed in a white palace robe. Her arms were covered by long flowing cloud sleeves, and her hair was a little fluffy. There was a bright red blood stain on her snow-white chin. Her beautiful appearance was not the slightest bit inferior to Lu Yanqing. Whether it was in terms of temperament or aura, she was even better. She seemed incomparably elegant and noble. She pushed the tree trunk away and staggered a few steps. Suddenly, her eyebrows furrowed slightly, and she looked like she was in pain. Her chest heaved up and down, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. In the blink of an eye, her eyes closed slightly and she fell to the ground, motionless. It was obvious that she had suffered serious injuries. Yu Qianqiu looked around again. When he looked back, he saw that Immortal Lord Crocodile was also staring outside with a serious expression. He immediately felt happy. He thought to himself, "Old thing, why are you pretending to be so serious? I have seen you in the cannibal tribe. You are called a man on the outside." He immediately sent a voice transmission and chuckled. "Old monster, that woman outside is beautiful, right? Are you tempted? Do you want to take the opportunity while she's unconscious to bring her in to take a look at her?" Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly turned around and stared at him. Just as a cold smile appeared on his face, he suddenly froze and frowned. He hurriedly sent a voice transmission. "Quick, quick, bring her in." Yuqiancho winked and smiled. He looked outside and used the earth spell. The woman was instantly swallowed by the wave of earth and sank into the ground. However, in the blink of an eye, more than a dozen streams of light flashed and appeared, all of them full of murderous intent. Yuqiancho was shocked. He immediately held his breath and did not dare to move. The leader was a burly bald man in black with a fierce look on his face. His bald head was shiny and he had big eyes without eyebrows. He was looking around with a fierce look in his eyes. After glancing at the blood on the ground, he hooked his index finger, and a bloody leaf fell into his hand. He gently crushed it with his fingers and snorted coldly. He opened his mouth and spoke in an unusually hoarse voice. He waved his hand and said, "That B*T is seriously injured. She can't run far. Everyone spread out and search." Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately sent a voice transmission to Yuqiancho. "Quickly dive down and hide, or we won't be able to hide from them." Yuqiancho naturally knew without the need for him to say anything. Hiding in such a shallow and close distance would not be able to hide from even a soul formation expert, let alone an immortal from the Eastern Holy Land. Moreover, the other party had the intention to search. He immediately used the earth spell to its limit. He grabbed the unconscious woman with one hand and pulled Immortal Lord Crocodile with the other. They quickly dove deep and far away. The movement of the underground soil immediately attracted the gazes of the dozen people to the small slope where the two of them had been hiding. The bald man shouted in a hoarse voice, "Underground." The dozen people attacked almost at the same time without hesitation. All kinds of dazzling lights shot out from their hands. Bang! There was a deafening sound as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. In an instant, the soil within a radius of nearly 1,000 meters flew everywhere. Countless trees and plants were instantly turned to ash. Amidst the scorched smoke, the dozen people were covered in a layer of transparent protective light shield. Their gazes were like torches as they looked down from the sky. Under their combined attack, a huge vortex-shaped pit with a radius of 1,000 meters appeared in the deep primitive forest. It was charred black and hundreds of meters deep. The dozen people's gazes penetrated the smoke and fog with their perception. They quickly scanned the ground, but they did not find any movement. They looked at each other and at the bald man in black. Their reactions were considered fast. They did not expect someone to be able to escape underground so quickly. It was probably as fast as flying. It was simply unbelievable. The bald man narrowed his eyes and looked down. He said slowly in a deep and hoarse voice, "Earth manipulation art? Could the earth manipulation spell allow him to escape so quickly underground? Could it be that I'm ignorant?" Everyone shook their heads, indicating that they had not heard of it. The bald man snorted coldly. "I have never heard of that woman using the earth element art. Did someone save her?" As soon as he said this, someone immediately cupped his hands and reported, "According to what I know, the city lord of Lust City, Huang Tian, knows the earth manipulation art. Also, Lust City is not far from here." Could it be him? Old man Huang Tian? Just him? The bald man laughed coldly and said, "It's not that I look down on him, but his tricks can only be used by a 3-year-old child to play hide and seek. They can't even be mentioned in the same breath as this kind of earth elemental technique. They are not on the same level at all. Yet he wants to escape underground with a person?" Chapter 789. I was speaking nonsense. That person cupped his hands and then he frowned and said, "That's strange. According to my knowledge, Huang Tian was the only one who knew how to control Earth amongst the people who survived all those years ago. Could it be that there's someone else? No matter who he is, since he doesn't dare to fight us head-on, there's no need to be afraid of him." The bald man in black suddenly looked at them and ordered in a hoarse voice, "Gather our people and search with all our might. We must find that B*TCH before she recovers. Once she recovers, all of us will have to bear the consequences." Yes. Everyone bowed and accepted the order, then quickly dispersed. At this time, Yuqiancho and the other two were wrapped in a bubble underground. The soil layer in front of them quickly parted, and the soil behind them closed up again. They were like fish in water or like stray dogs fleeing in panic. Yu Qianqiu held the injured woman with one arm, his eyes closed and the fingers of his other hand stretched forward, using the earth manipulation technique to quickly open up a path. Immortal Lord Crocodile placed both palms on Yu Qianqiu's back, pushing Yu Qianqiu forward quickly. The two of them could be said to be complementing each other. One of them did not have enough cultivation, but the magical earth manipulation technique could break through the soil and open up a path, while the other used his profound cultivation to act as an engine, pushing Yu Qianqiu at full speed. Even so, there was blood at the corner of their mouths and their faces were pale. Although the two of them had dodged the joint attack of more than a dozen people and did not hit them head-on, they were too close and could not teleport like they could outside. In addition, the combined power of those people was indeed strong. A strong impact was like hitting a cow across a mountain, quickly injuring the two of them. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu's reaction was quick, and he instantly used the earth manipulation technique to cause the ground to fluctuate, immediately dissipating a lot of the strong impact. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for them to escape. Even so, the two of them were still seriously injured. "Old monster, stop!" Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes and shouted. Immortal Lord Crocodile quickly stopped. In fact, he had also discovered that along the way, large rocks had appeared all around them. Yu Qianqiu was having some difficulty opening a path. He kept making detours through the mud between the rocks. It looked like he was flying fast, but in fact he was not running far. "Old monster, how far have we run?" Yu Qianqiu asked again. "He should be hundreds of miles away," Immortal Lord Crocodile said. "Paw." Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his hand and fiercely slapped the woman's plump buttocks. Immortal Crocodile immediately shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, what are you doing? Damn it. What do you think I'm doing?" Yu Qianqiu looked at the person in his arms and said unhappily, "In order to help you save the damsel in distress, I almost lost my life. Do you still have a problem with me taking advantage of her? Damn it. Feels good." As he spoke, he did not hesitate to pinch her. Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at his actions in shock, then looked at the woman in his arms. The corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. While he was in a daze, Yu Qianqiu had already thrown the woman onto the ground without any mercy. He slowly walked forward with his palm outstretched. The soil parted, and before long a huge, grayish-white stone appeared from the soil. He pressed his palm on the stone, slightly tilted his head and closed his eyes silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at his strange actions and did not know what he was up to. Suddenly he saw a faint smile appear on Yu Qianqiu's face. The huge rock that he was pressing on suddenly melted like snow, and a 2-meter-wide stone appeared in front of him, continuously extending inside. Yu Qianqiu put his palm out and closed his eyes as he walked inside. The smile on his face became wider and wider, as if he had discovered something. Immortal Lord Crocodile saw that he could control rocks as easily as he controlled the earth, and was immediately surprised. Without a doubt, this kid must have just comprehended it. Previously, when he encountered rocks, he had to go around in circles. Seeing that he was getting further and further away, Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly looked around. He did not know how deep underground they were, and he could not lose him or it would be troublesome to get out. So he hurriedly picked up the woman that Yu Qianqiu had casually thrown to the ground, and quickly followed. After following behind Yu Qianqiu for a few hundred meters, he could not help but ask, "How did you do it?" Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu stopped, opened his eyes and looked around. He smiled faintly and said, "So it works like this. I'm really a genius." His face was full of pride. When he was escaping underground, he was constantly blocked by rocks and had to go around them, which made him very angry. But at that moment, the scene of extracting metals from ores in his previous life flashed across his mind. With the mentality of giving it a try, he used the metal conjuration art on the rock, and found that there seemed to be a little reaction from the rock, but it was still indifferent. So he tried using the earth art and metal art together, and a miracle happened. He had never thought that using the earth art and metal art together could produce such a miraculous effect. But this was not what made him the happiest. The happiest thing was that he had found another way to use the 5 elemental arts. It turned out that the 5 elemental arts could be used together, which meant that the 5 elemental arts had a lot of potential. Yu Qianqiu reached out and touched the stone wall again, then turned to look at Immortal Lord Crocodile and said, "The back of this stone wall seems to be empty. Could we have found some treasure?" He suddenly thought of the strange experience of finding the Divine Spirit Stone when he first came to the Demon Ghost region. Immortal Lord Crocodile rolled his eyes and said speechlessly, Dream on. How can it be so easy to find a treasure? Besides, no one would bury something so deep, right? Maybe it's an underground karst cave. We'll know once we open it. Yu Qianqiu nodded and pushed with his palm. The stone wall immediately melted and spread in all directions, and the stone passage quickly extended forward. Suddenly, a light appeared in the darkness a dozen meters ahead, and it was opened. Treasure light? The two looked at each other, and Immortal Lord Crocodile was even more speechless. Could it be that this kid was right, that there was really a treasure here? Without a word, Yu Qianqiu flashed over and stood at the exit at the end of the passage. Immortal Lord Crocodile followed behind, and with just one look, he could not help but laugh. In fact, it was not Yu Qianqiu who had guessed right, but he himself who had guessed right. There was no treasure here, and the underground space in front of them was indeed an underground karst cave. The two rushed into the karst cave one after another. There was a pool in front of them, with stalactites of various shapes and sizes on both sides. There were also many stalactites hanging upside down above the cave, with crystal clear water droplets dripping into the river, making crisp and melodious tinkling sounds. The strangest thing was that there was colorful fluorescent sand everywhere in this karst cave, making the entire karst cave shine brightly. This was also why the two saw the light. Tsk tisk. Yu Qianqiu stood by the pool and exclaimed. Immortal Lord Crocodile did not know what he saw. He placed the woman in his hands on the ground, walked to the side of the pool, and immediately understood the reason for Yu Qianqiu's surprise. There were living aquatic animals in this pool, and the strange thing was that these aquatic animals' bodies could actually glow. The floating crown-like jellyfish's crown shone with light. The stealth transparent white shrimp's abdomen also shone with blue light. There were also some fish whose heads, tails, or backs glowed with colorful light. They were all very beautiful aquatic animals that lived peacefully in this undisturbed pool. The depths of the pool were pitch black, seemingly bottomless. It was probably connected to an underground river. Immortal Lord Crocodile tilted his head to look at Yu Qianqiu. Seeing him smiling foolishly with blood at the corner of his mouth, he touched his mouth and squatted by the pool to clean himself. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it, then lowered his head to look at his own reflection in the water. He squatted down to wash up as well. When he was done, he turned around and saw that Immortal Lord Crocodile was taking out an immortal pill to feed to the woman. He couldn't help but walk over and tease, "Old monster, did you fall in love with me because I'm pretty? I advise you to think carefully. This woman's cultivation level is not weak. Don't save your enemy. Do you know her?" Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded silently, indicating that he knew her. He calmed down and helped the woman refine the immortal pill. After a long time, he slowly laid the woman down. After that, he sat down cross-legged at the side and swallowed a celestial pill to heal himself. However, he noticed that Yu Qianqiu was looking at the woman up and down with malicious intent. He frowned and took out the bottle of celestial pills and handed it over. He said, "If you're injured, then stop for a moment and heal yourself first." "I don't need it." Yu Qianqiu subconsciously waved his hand. He stared at the woman lying on the ground and clicked his tongue. "This woman is really beautiful. She's stunning." Immortal Lord Crocodile paused and asked in surprise, "You don't need to heal yourself?" Yu Qianqiu was taken aback, then he laughed and said, "Medicine is 30% poisonous. I usually resist as much as I can and try not to take medicine." Although he said that, in fact there was another hidden reason. The Jindan in his body was very magical. Every time he was injured, it would immediately play a miraculous effect to help him recover. It was faster than taking any panacea. At this time, it seemed that he had almost recovered. Hearing this, Immortal Lord Crocodile put away the bottle in his hand and closed his eyes to heal himself. "Take your time to heal yourself. I'll go out and see what's going on outside." Yu Qianqiu threw down these words, and in a flash, he rushed out of the hole he came from and quickly rose to the surface. When he sensed the surface, he could not help but click his tongue. It turned out that they had already run thousands of meters underground. Like Du Xingxuan, he quietly poked his head out of the ground and looked around. When he realized that he was still in the forest, he quickly got out of the ground and flashed to a tree. He hid in the dense foliage and looked around. In the end, he was secretly shocked to find that there were people flying quickly in the air around him, as if searching for something. He shrunk his head back and immediately dove headfirst into the ground, disappearing without a trace. When he returned to the underground cave, Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and looked at him. "What's the situation outside?" Yu Qianqiu shook his head and stared at the woman on the ground, who was still unconscious. "There are people searching everywhere. We can't go out for now. Who is this woman?" Why are they mobilizing so many people? It seems like they won't stop until they find her. Great, I'm afraid we'll have to stay here for a while. Chapter 790. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the unconscious woman with a serious expression and said in a low voice, "She's badly injured." "You don't have to tell me that, I can tell." Yu Qianqiu squatted down next to him and winked at him. "Old monster, tell me, who is she? Was she an old flame of yours?" Immortal Lord Crocodile looked over and stared at him, who was smiling mischievously. He sneered. "Who is she? Haven't you guessed it yet? She was once one of the 12 great immortal lords in the celestial world." Ah. Yu Qianqiu's eyes were slightly confused and then his smile froze. He seemed to have thought of something and his mouth twitched. He pointed at the unconscious woman and asked weakly, You mean she's Jianghu?" Immortal Lord Crocodile sat there motionlessly and sneered. "If she's not her, then who do you think she is?" Yu Qianqiu's outstretched hand jerked back as if he had been electrocuted. He said with a stiff expression, "Old monster, don't joke with me. How could she be Jianghu? With immortal Lord Jianghu's strength, who in the East Holy Land would dare to touch her?" He felt a chill down his spine when he thought of how he had just pinched and slapped this woman's butt. "If I'm not wrong?" Immortal Lord Crocodile looked back at the woman on the ground and sighed. "This might have happened because of your master. She was probably severely injured by your master first, and then she fell into their trap. Otherwise they wouldn't have dared to touch her so easily." "She's really Jianghu?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. His gaze lingered on the unconscious woman's pretty face. Even though there were bloodstains on her face and she looked haggard, it couldn't hide her cold and aloof temperament. She was clearly someone who had been above others for a long time. Her messy hair was resting on the ground, and her eyebrows were tightly knitted together. There was a hint of anger between her smooth, white brows. Damn it. This woman was clearly not someone to be trifled with. She was still holding a grudge even when she was unconscious. A ruthless expression gradually appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. His eyes flickered as he stood up and slowly walked towards the unconscious Jianghu. His every move fell into Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, what are you trying to do?" "Nothing." Yu Qianqiu's gaze was deep and indifferent as he said, "While she's down, I'll take her life." "Stop." Lord Crocodile leaped to his feet and stood between the two of them. "Yu Qianqiu, she has no grudge against you, why did you kill her? It's better to nip some things in the bud." Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and said, "If she wakes up and finds out that it was my master who injured her, and what I did just now, based on her abilities, if she goes berserk, I won't be able to handle it. Rather than making such a strong enemy, it's better to kill him first and get rid of future troubles." "Are you crazy?" Immortal Lord Crocodile shouted. "If you don't say and I don't say, who will know that it was your master who injured her? Who will know what you did to her just now?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, "You really won't say?" "Don't worry. I know what I can say and what I can't," Immortal Lord Crocodile said impatiently. "Then forget it. Pretend I didn't say anything." Yu Qianqiu flung his sleeves and acted as if nothing had happened. He turned around and found a place to sit down. "You." Before Immortal Lord Crocodile could say anything, Yu Qianqiu interrupted. "Old monster, who are those people chasing after Jianghu?" The anger on Immortal Lord Crocodile's face disappeared. He frowned and snorted. "They should be Yi Zhao's men. That bald man in black is called Rakshasa, and he is an early-stage immortal emperor. He is Yi Zhao's disciple. Rakshasa probably wants to seize power while Jianghu is injured after Yi Zhao is dead." "Yes. From what you said, I think it's possible. If Jianghu is dead, that bald man might become the boss of the East Holy Land." Yu Qianqiu nodded slowly. As he was thinking about this, he suddenly realized that Immortal Lord Crocodile was taking off his clothes. In the blink of an eye, he was only left with his underwear. Yu Qianqiu's mouth opened wide. He looked at the unconscious Jianghu, then at the almost naked and muscular Immortal Lord Crocodile. He said in surprise, "Old monster, you don't have to be so anxious when you see your lover." As he said that, he quickly got up and waved his hand. "I don't like to watch live performances. I'll go back in 4 hours. Is that enough?" Immortal Lord Crocodile snorted and could not be bothered with him. He knew that whenever this kid was free, the more he bothered with him, the more trouble he would cause. He flung his long hair, and his braids were instantly untied. He took out a yellow pill and walked to the side of the pool. He crushed the yellow pill into powder with his palms and mixed it with the pool water. He began to rub it on his hair and face and bit by bit his whole body. Soon his whole body looked like it was covered in black paste. Immortal Lord Crocodile dived into the pool, and the clear pool water instantly turned murky. When he walked out of the pool again, his body had recovered to its original fair complexion. He turned around and water splashed everywhere. Suddenly his body was wrapped in a layer of white light. When the white light disappeared, he was already dressed in a silver robe. With his long silver hair draped over his shoulders, the dignified Immortal Lord Crocodile appeared again. Yu Qianqiu looked at him with a disgusted expression, a naughty smile on his face. Immortal Lord Crocodile's hair stood on end. He took out another yellow pill from his storage bracelet and threw it to him. You should recover too. Yu Qianqiu caught the yellow pill and looked at it. He put it away and said, I'll stay like this for now. It's more convenient when I'm in the Holy East Lands. Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He looked at himself and did not say anything. He walked to the side and sat on the ground. Yu Qianqiu looked at him, then at the unconscious Jianghu on the ground. He finally could not help but snicker. Old monster, I really couldn't tell. You're quite mindful of your image in front of a beautiful woman. Immortal Lord Crocodile was not afraid of his mockery. He said calmly, of course. Although my cultivation is not as good as before, I was one of the 12 great immortal lords with her. There's no reason for her to look down on me. There are always setbacks in life. When one is down and out, one does not catch the eye of one's acquaintances. He will rise again in the future. It's human nature. I understand. Yu Qianqiu did not continue to provoke him. He tilted his head to look at the unconscious Jianghu. When will she wake up? It should be about time. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. When she wakes up, she will be able to take care of herself. She will recover quickly. As he spoke, he suddenly frowned and flashed to Jianghu's side. Yu Qianqiu looked over. Jianghu's eyebrows moved slightly, and her eyes slowly opened. Perhaps because she suddenly realized that there were people beside her, and her subconscious was still in the pursuit, she was on high alert. She disappeared on the spot and flashed into the air. Her long cloud sleeves fluttered, and her white clothes fluttered. She looked like a fairy descending. Her bright eyes flashed and she said sternly, Who are you? As soon as she said that, she frowned and covered her abdomen with one hand. A trace of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. Her expression was one of pain. She was obviously seriously injured. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately raised his hand and shouted, Sister Jianghu, you have not recovered from your injuries. Don't be rash. Look carefully. Don't you recognize me? Jianghu's body trembled and she slowly raised her head. Her bright eyes fell on Immortal Lord Crocodile, revealing an expression of disbelief. After looking at him repeatedly, she confirmed that it was true. She immediately floated to Immortal Lord Crocodile's side like a fairy. She said hoarsely, Brother Crocodile, you are still alive? But your cultivation, how weren't you killed by the Thousand Swords Demon Lord? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly raised his head and laughed loudly, causing the cave to tremble. His laughter was full of sorrow. After a long time he replied firmly, I was killed by the Thousand Swords Demon Lord. Unfortunately, I was lucky and I was not killed. I was suppressed for more than 100,000 years. As he spoke, he waved his hand and patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder. Yu Qianqiu's body tilted and his eyes rolled back. He sighed and said, Thanks to this little brother, I was able to escape and see the light of day again. Yu Qianqiu pushed Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand away and tried to stand up straight. He smiled at Jianghu and nodded kindly. Then he said to Immortal Lord Crocodile in a graceful manner, It's not worth mentioning, not worth mentioning. It's my duty, my duty. I am a person who loves to help others. Jianghu glanced at him and ignored him. Then she looked at herself and said happily, Could it be that Brother Crocodile saved me at the critical moment? Yu Qianqiu still maintained a smile on his face, but in his heart, he regretted not slapping her a few more times. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder again. He said, What a coincidence. You and I were both saved by him. Don't you think this is God's will? He was the one who saved me? Jianghu was startled. Only then did she re-examine Yu Qianqiu. She immediately discovered that she couldn't see through his cultivation. Immediately she was shocked. She shook her sleeves and wrapped them around her arms. She bowed slightly and said, Jianghu, thanks you for saving my life. May I know who you are? You flatter me, you flatter me. Yu Qianzhou's hands were like flowers. He smiled and said, "It's my duty, my duty. I am born to help others." Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand to stop her. "Sister, don't bother with him. This kid has a glib tongue and is full of nonsense. He is only a soul formation cultivator. It was just a coincidence that he saved you. He is not a master." Then he frowned and asked, "Why did Luosha want to kill you?" Jiwu looked suspiciously at Yu Qianzhou, who was embarrassed. She immediately told Immortal Lord Crocodile about how Bai Changchun started a massacre in the Immortal City and how she was chased. It was just as Immortal Lord Crocodile had guessed. After being injured by Bai Changchun, she was ambushed by Luosha and the others while she was recuperating. That was why she ended up like this. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Yu Qianzhou meaningfully. It seemed to be saying, "Your master injured her and you saved her. Your merits and demerits offset each other. Don't expect her to owe you a favor." In fact, Yu Qianzhou did not intend for Ji Wu to owe him a favor. Instead, he was worried that Immortal Lord Crocodile would expose the fact that his master was Bai Changchun. He still hoped that Ji Wu would tell him where the purple flames were. It would be best if there was no conflict. Chapter 791. When the two old friends met, they naturally talked about many things. Their savior Yu Qianzhou was completely ignored. Yu Qianzhou didn't think much of it. He listened quietly at the side. He could tell that these two had a good relationship back in the immortal world. After chatting for a while, they talked about how they were being hunted. Ji Wu immediately gritted her teeth and said, "I won't let those Rakshasa people off." In a fit of anger, she covered her abdomen with her hand again, and a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of her mouth. According to her, she almost never interfered with anything in the East Holy Land. This mainland was basically ruled by Yishao. She had always been hiding in the West Palace. If it wasn't for Bai Changchun causing havoc in the Immortal City and Yishao asking her for help, she wouldn't even have shown herself. However, she had never imagined that she, who had always stood aloof from worldly affairs, would be regarded as a stumbling block by the disciples of the Night Owl sect after she was injured, and they would launch a sneak attack on her. This was also the reason why she was so angry. Immortal Crocodile immediately raised his hand to comfort her. "Sister, don't worry. It won't be too late to take revenge after you recover. They won't be able to escape from the Heaven and Earth Universe Array." As he spoke, he took out a bottle of pills and handed it over. "I was overjoyed to see Sister. I spoke too much and almost delayed Sister's recovery. If there's anything, it won't be too late to talk about it after you've recovered." Ji Wu took over the bottle and poured out an immortal pill that was shrouded in a purple mist. For a moment, the entire karst cave was filled with a strange aroma that could refresh one's mind. Ji Wu looked at the elixir in her palm and smiled bitterly. "Everyone has been sealed by the Heaven and Earth Chengkuan Array for so many years. Everything that needs to be used has been used up. Fortunately, we met Brother Crocodile. Otherwise, I don't know how long it would take for my little sister to recover." Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled bitterly and said, "I'd rather use up all these things than be suppressed for 100,000 years and have my cultivation level greatly reduced. I don't know how long it will take for me to recover. But that's good too. I can finally put it to good use today. To be able to help Sister, it's worth being trapped for so many years." Saying so, he suddenly exclaimed, "Sister, don't you have a golden fur immortal ape? Why don't I see him? Could he have been killed by Luosha and the others?" Yu Qianzhou's ears perked up. Ji Wu shook her head and smiled bitterly. "That's not it. Brother Crocodile, you might not know this, but the Heaven and Earth Universe Array is really strange. After the last battle with the Thousand Swords Demon King, the immortal beasts and spirit beasts that we brought from the immortal world all showed abnormalities after a few years. The Heaven and Earth Universe Array seemed to be absorbing the spiritual energy in their bodies. As a result, those immortal beasts and spirit beasts withered year by year. In the end, not a single one of them could last for 30,000 years and all of them died." "I see." Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly. Yu Qianzhou, who was at the side, seemed to have thought of something. He immediately sent a telepathic message, "Old monster, ask him what's going on with the fence meat." This had always been a mystery in his heart. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and changed the topic. Ji Wu frowned slightly and said, "Other than mining, the main reason why those warriors came was because Yishao had obtained a scroll of magic left behind by the demon Dao. It was said that it could break the Heaven and Earth Universe Array seal, but it needed strong men to refine it. No one knew how many people had died in the experiment. More than 200 years ago, the Night Owl had successfully sent a disciple out. However, after that disciple went out, there was no news of him. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Originally, after this fence meet, Yi Xiao was going to try it himself. Who knew that a lunatic would suddenly appear and ruin Yi Xiao's dream? More than 200 years ago? Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He finally understood where the immortal that the old man killed in the East Sea more than 200 years ago came from. He had never figured it out. It turned out that the immortal had escaped from the heaven and earth universe array. However, that person was too unlucky. He could have met anyone in the human world, but he actually met the top expert in the world. It was not an ordinary kind of bad life. He escaped from the heaven and earth universe array, but he was killed. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and smiled bitterly. So what if he got out? I'm afraid that person will not be able to return to the celestial world. Jianghu was startled and said, Brother Crocodile, why do you say that? Did something happen outside? Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at Yu Qianqiu, but Yu Qianqiu knew what he was going to say. He kept signaling him with his eyes, trying to persuade him not to say it. After hesitating for a while, Immortal Lord Crocodile said, Yu Qianqiu, you don't have to worry. I believe that Sister Jianghu is not that kind of person. Yu Qianqiu wanted to tell him that one could not know a person's heart, but he knew that anything he said now would be fake. Jianghu looked at the two of them with a puzzled expression. She did not know what the two of them were talking about. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Jianghu and said, The immortal ascension stage in the human world has been set up with the soul transformation smoke. With Yi Xiao's cultivation, even if he wanted to return to the celestial world through the netherworld realm, it would be difficult for him to pass through the netherworld realm. That's why I said it would be difficult for him to return to the celestial world. Jianghu squeezed the immortal pill in her hand, her eyes flashing. After a moment of hesitation, she asked, Brother Crocodile, how do you know that the immortal ascension stage has been set up with the soul transformation smoke? Immortal Lord Crocodile explained, To tell you the truth, I have a way to enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. I have been to the immortal ascension stage once and saw the soul transformation smoke set up with my own eyes. What? Jianghu exclaimed. Brother Crocodile can enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array? To her, the soul transformation smoke was no longer important. The most unbelievable thing was that Immortal Lord Crocodile could enter and exit the heaven and earth universe array. Damn it. They say that heroes have a weakness for the charms of a beautiful woman. I thought it was referring to people like me. I didn't expect demons to have a weakness for beauties too. Yu Qianqiu cursed silently. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded slightly. He waved his hand and slapped Yu Qianqiu again. His eyes rolled and he sighed. Don't underestimate him. Although his cultivation level is not high, his master is not to be underestimated. His master. Old demon, you can't burn bridges after crossing the river. Yu Qianqiu swatted away the arm that was slapping his shoulder and roared crazily. This time he was really angry. He did not expect Immortal Lord Crocodile to reveal all his secrets. What? You don't want to find the purple fire anymore? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked calmly. Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He pointed at Immortal Lord Crocodile and sneered. You win. If you don't take my words seriously, then we'll see who is more ruthless. Immortal Lord Crocodile paused. He remembered that he did promise not to say anything. In addition, he still needed Jianghu's help to leave the heaven and earth universe array. He immediately turned and said, Sister Jianghu, let me ask you something. You have been here for many years. Do you know where the purple fire that supports the heaven and earth universe array is hidden? Purple fire? Jianghu paused. Seeing that Immortal Lord Crocodile had changed the topic, she knew that he would not say anything more. However, thinking that even Immortal Lord Crocodile said that Yu Qianqiu's master was not to be underestimated, she did not dare to underestimate Yu Qianqiu. She stared at Yu Qianqiu seriously and said, Why are you looking for the purple fire? No one can go near that place. Sister, don't say any more. Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand to stop her from continuing. He asked, When we first fought the Myriad Swords Demon Lord, I remember that you saved Silver Armor Soldier's life. Silver Armor Soldier gave you a token, saying that if you encountered any trouble in the netherworld, you could ask him for help. If the two of us break into the netherworld, are you confident that you can get the Silver Armored Army to escort us back to the immortal world? Jianghu's bright eyes immediately flashed with extraordinary splendor. She seemed very excited. She never dreamed that there would be a day when she could escape the cage of the heaven and earth formation. After he calmed down a little, he seemed a little hesitant and said, There is such a thing, but the Emperor of the Underworld has never been too fond of the people of the immortal world. I'm afraid that even the Silver Armor Army may not be able to make this decision." Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded with approval. If Jianghu had agreed immediately, he might have been skeptical about what would happen next. But now it seemed that Jianghu was still the same Jianghu from back then. He immediately laughed and said, "You don't have to worry about this. I have dealt with the Silver Armored Army a few times. He is a man who values friendship and is also the commander of the Emperor of the Underworld's guards. He is highly regarded by the Emperor of the Underworld. As long as he is willing to help, the chances of the Emperor of the Underworld not giving him face are very small. You will definitely help him return this favor." He turned to look at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Yu Qianqiu, I believed you at first when you said that you could help me recover my cultivation. But after thinking about it, I really felt that it was a little unreliable. Let's not talk about the past. Now that I have met Sister Jianghu, I have hope of returning to the immortal world. Please help me. As long as you send us out of the heaven and earth formation, I will ask Sister Jianghu to tell you where the purple flames are. It is much better than asking around blindly and taking great risks." Then he secretly transmitted his voice, "Don't worry, I won't tell anyone the secret of you collecting the purple flames to cultivate the Samadhi true fire. This is mainly because of your master who is worthy of my respect. Besides, I might as well warn you in advance that you may be able to collect the purple flames, but if you want to fuse them into the Samadhi true fire, I'm afraid your current cultivation is far from enough. You better take care of yourself." Damn it. He was indeed a shrewd old man. He had been deceived by his silly appearance. At the crucial moment he was playing tricks on him. Yu Qianqiu was speechless. He should have thought of this earlier. How could a person ranked among the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world be simple? He was just pretending to be ignorant. "Tell me, where is the purple flames?" Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and said. Jianghu could obviously see that there seemed to be a story between the two. She looked at Immortal Crocodile inquiringly, asking if he should tell her. Immortal Crocodile pondered for a moment and said, "Yu Qianqiu, don't misunderstand and don't overthink it. I have absolutely no ill intentions towards you. Similarly, I trust you." He then turned to Jianghu and nodded. "Tell him first." Jianghu looked up and down at Yu Qianqiu with a somewhat curious gaze. She slowly said, "In the easternmost region of this continent, there's a barren wasteland where not even a blade of grass grows. Someone once saw traces of purple flames there. Why don't you go there and take a look?" Chapter 792. The Easternmost Land? Yu Qianqiu was surprised. In the easternmost part of this continent? Jianghu nodded slightly to confirm. Yu Qianqiu thought for a while and asked, "Do you have a specific location? The easternmost land is too big. Can you be more specific?" "I can't be more specific. No one knows the specific location because no one can go deep into it. In addition, rumor has it that the purple fire appears and disappears randomly. You can't see it unless it's by chance. Those who have seen it before are purely coincidental. So, I can't tell you the specific location," Jianghu explained. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded. "That depends on your luck." Yu Qianqiu was silent for a long time before he raised his head to look at the two. His gaze landed on Immortal Lord Crocodile and he slowly said, "Old monster, I can bring the two of you out of the heaven and earth universe formation, but you have to promise me that you will not stay in the human world." Before he finished, Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand indifferently. "You worry too much. You don't have to worry about that. It's meaningless for us to stay in the human world. Once we're out of the heaven and earth universe formation, we'll go straight to the netherworld and return to the celestial world. From then on, if fate allows it, we'll meet again in the celestial world." "All right," Yu Qianqiu said firmly. "I believe you. I hope you're not lying to me. Otherwise, I'll send you off now." "Wait." Jianghu stretched out her arms and said with a hint of anger in between her brows, "Now is not the time to leave. Wait until I recover and kill those Rakshasa people. We can't just let them go like this." Those who could make it to the celestial world's 12 great immortal lords were indeed not to be trifled with. Beauties were no exception. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Jianghu and thought. Immortal Lord Crocodile frowned and said, "Sister Jianghu, I have something to say but I don't know if I should say it." Jianghu was startled. She seemed to have guessed what Immortal Crocodile was going to say. Her eyes flickered and she bit her lip. She bowed slightly and said, "Brother Crocodile, if you have something to say, just say it. I will listen." "Sister, it is indeed important to recover from your injuries first. but revenge. Immortal Lord Crocodile hesitated for a while and said slowly, "In my opinion, if you really want revenge, don't you think trapping the Rakshasa and the others here forever is the greatest revenge? Besides, I'm worried that things might change if we delay. Of course, I'm just saying. You can make the decision yourself." Jianghu bit her lip. She seemed to have made up her mind and said, "Sister, listen to Brother Crocodile. Give me 3 days to heal." Immortal Crocodile nodded in satisfaction. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Wait for us for 3 days. Bring us out of the heaven and earth Qianquan array 3 days later. How about that?" "Sure," Yu Qianqiu agreed. He walked to the side and sat down with his eyes closed. He looked calm on the surface, but he felt that he had agreed too rashly. However, there was nothing he could do. With their cultivation levels, he could not do anything to them. Immortal Lord Crocodile must have known that. If he didn't agree, Jianghu's injuries would heal sooner or later. Once she recovered, with her cultivation level, the Holy East Land would be her world, and it would be very difficult for him to have the chance to collect the purple flames again. Jianghu also swallowed the immortal pill and immediately sat down cross-legged to heal her injuries. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at the two of them and sat down cross-legged in between them. Inside the cave, the sun and the moon did not know. To them, time was like a flash of light in the cave. 3 days in the cave passed quickly. Yu Qianqiu's heart was not at peace during these 3 days. He kept thinking of countermeasures in case something unexpected happened. In less than 3 days, Jianghu was the first to stand up, feeling refreshed. Immortal Lord Crocodile opened his eyes and smiled. "Sister, how do you feel?" Jianghu bowed and said, "It's all thanks to Big Brother Crocodile's elixir. Otherwise, I would not have recovered so quickly. Let me freshen up first, then I will leave the heaven and earth universe formation with Big Brother Crocodile." After saying that, she turned and walked to the pool. She did not even take off her clothes. The pool water slowly submerged her. The water rippled and there was a white figure dancing under the water. Damn it! How could she bathe like this without taking off her clothes? Yu Qianqiu was speechless and a little disappointed. However, when the beauty came out of the water again, Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. Jianghu slowly walked out of the water. Her long hair was wet and her skin was smooth. She had washed away the blood on her body. Water droplets dripped from her cold, pretty face. She was like a thorny rose in the morning, enduring the dew. Coupled with the sunlight in the cave, it was really tempting. She raised her hands high and tied her long hair into a bun again. The palace gauze wrapped around her body, accentuating her exquisite curves. However, good things did not last long. As soon as Jianghu walked to the shore, a white mist rose from her body. As the mist dissipated, the hibiscus out of the water instantly returned to her cold and dignified appearance. She seemed to notice that someone was looking at her. She stared at him coldly with a murderous look. Yu Qianqiu shivered and immediately turned his head to the side awkwardly. He saw Immortal Lord Crocodile staring at him with a sneer. It seemed to be saying, "I don't even dare to look at you. You're really brave." Yu Qianqiu coughed and stood up. He glanced at the two of them and said indifferently, "Can the two of you leave now?" Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Jianghu inquiringly. Jianghu nodded. He also stood up and explained to Jianghu, he's going to use a magical teleportation array. He'll need the girl's cooperation later. "Close your eyes first," he told Jianghu what Yu Qianqiu had told him. The latter frowned slightly and muttered softly, "Teleportation array?" Although she did not understand, she trusted Immortal Lord Crocodile and nodded in agreement. "Everyone stand closer." Yu Qianqiu put on an act and called the two of them to his side. Then he threw a few small silver balls at them. Then he formed hand seals and muttered something. Jianghu looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile in confusion. Seeing that he had already closed his eyes, she hesitated for a moment and closed her eyes as well. In the blink of an eye, Jianghu heard a shrill wind in her ears. The temperature dropped a lot. She noticed that her surroundings seemed to have changed. Her eyes moved under her eyelids. She wanted to open her eyes to take a look, but she did not dare to take the risk. In the end, she held back. Yu Qianqiu looked around and smiled at the two of them. "Okay, we're here." The two of them opened their eyes at the same time, only to see that their surroundings were dark and gloomy, and the chilly wind was howling. In front of them was a gloomy and terrifying cave with its mouth wide open, like a monster opening its mouth and roaring. The strong chilly wind was blowing out from that cave. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Jianghu looked at each other. The latter cried out, "Ninth Netherworld Cave." Jianghu was in disbelief. She took a few steps forward and stood at the edge of the cliff. She stared at the cave opposite and said in a trembling voice, "It's really the 9th Netherworld cave." She turned back and said excitedly, "Big brother crocodile, am I dreaming? This is the 9th Netherworld cave. I'm really out of the heaven and earth universe formation. Is this real?" Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled and nodded. He turned to Yu Qianqiu and said, "Thank you. We will keep your secret. We will never tell anyone about it. I hope we will meet again in the immortal world." He stretched out his hand and said, "Give me a storage bag." "What for?" Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, but he still took out a storage bag and handed it to Immortal Lord Crocodile. After Immortal Monarch Crocodile received the interspatial pouch, he immediately took out a bunch of shiny black things from his storage bracelet and put them into the interspatial pouch. Yu Qianqiu's eyes widened in shock and his heart thumped wildly. Divine Great Spirit Stones. Is it for me? Sure enough, Immortal Monarch Crocodile handed it back to Huang Xiaolong with a smile. "I don't have anything to thank you with, but I can see that you like spirit stones. Here are 200 million Divine Great Spirit Stones. Take it as our thanks for your help. With a beauty by my side, I have to be polite." Yu Qianqiu's heart itched, but he pretended to be serious and grabbed the storage bag tightly. He pretended to decline. "You're too polite. We helped each other and it's just a small favor. There's no need to be so polite." Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at his hand that was clutching the storage bag tightly. He shook his head and laughed. If you can successfully return to the immortal world with little sister Jianghu, with her cultivation, these spirit stones are nothing. If you can't return smoothly, it's a waste to keep these spirit stones. You should just accept them." He let go of the storage bag. Since you've put it this way, I won't be unreasonable." Yu Qianqiu quickly stuffed the storage bag into his robe and touched his chest. A smile bloomed on his face. Suddenly his eyes turned and he took out a small silver ball. He pretended to inject a few spells into it, then grabbed Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand and stuffed it into his palm. Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He was very familiar with this thing. He asked, "What do you mean?" "That." Yu Qianqiu sighed. "As you said, I hope we'll have a chance to meet in the immortal world. If you can successfully pass through the netherworld and return to the immortal world, you can scatter this small silver ball somewhere in the immortal world. If I really have a chance to go to the immortal world, I'll be able to sense it. At least I'll know that you've arrived safely. If possible, I might go find you, old monster, to reminisce about old times. Do you welcome me?" Immortal Lord Crocodile paused, then immediately laughed. "Okay, it's a deal. We'll meet again in the immortal world if there's a chance." He put the silver ball in his hand into his bracelet. Yu Qianqiu took 2 steps back and cupped his hands at the two. "I wish the two of you a smooth journey and a safe return to the immortal world. Please." He raised his hand and gestured to the entrance of the 9th Netherworld cave. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Jianghu looked at each other. The latter nodded slightly at Yu Qianqiu to express his gratitude. Then they turned into 2 rays of white light and flashed into the 9th Netherworld cave. Yu Qianqiu stood on the cliff, facing the chilly wind blowing out of the cave expressionlessly. He seemed to be waiting for something. After a long time, the 9th Netherworld cave suddenly spewed out a strong ink-black chilly wind. The howling of the wind was mournful. After a while it slowly calmed down. He slowly heaved a sigh of relief. The change in the 9th Netherworld cave just now meant that someone had opened the gate to the Netherworld and finally sent these 2 great gods away. Chapter 793. Although Immortal Crocodile did not do anything wrong, Yu Qianqiu still felt that Immortal Crocodile was the one who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. Thinking of this, he wanted to give Immortal Crocodile a few more silver balls and ask him to help him throw some into the netherworld, but he was afraid of arousing Immortal Crocodile's suspicions, so he held back in the end. After being distracted for a while, he turned around and saw Yu Ji and the others from the Evil Wind Valley bowing to him. Obviously they were attracted by the changes in the 9th Netherworld cave. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand expressionlessly and said, "There's nothing else, disperse." After saying that, he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was back in the karst cave where he had stayed before. He looked around and found that he was the only one left, so he was a little disappointed. Then he seemed to have thought of something and snickered again. He looked at his palm and sighed, "Even in the immortal world, who has ever touched Immortal Monarch Dancing G's butt? I have touched it, hee." Amidst the laughter, he took off his clothes and changed into the almost naked fur clothes of the cannibals. Then he carried a spear, flashed into the cave wall and quickly rose to the surface. After reaching the surface, he poked his head out and looked around. Seeing that there was nothing unusual, he climbed out of the ground. After determining the direction to the east, he carried his spear and flew through the forest at a moderate speed. Along the way, he hunted a few wild pheasants, tied his legs and carried the spear on his shoulder. Swinging his braids, he continued to hurry on his way. He looked valiant and heroic as well as romantic and elegant. However, the movement in the sky was too big, and there were people flying over every few days. He had no choice but to stop and use his feet to cross the mountains. Whenever this happened, he could always feel that someone was spying on him. With his impenetrable cultivation and realistic disguise, he was lucky enough to pass. In the end, he realized that this method was stupid and too dangerous. Why didn't he use the earth element method? He identified the direction and sank hundreds of meters underground, using the earth art to fly quickly. Along the way, when he encountered rocks blocking his way, he would immediately use the earth and metal arts at the same time. When he encountered the obstruction of an underground river, he would immediately switch to the water arts. It could be said that his journey underground was unimpeded. Other than popping his head out from time to check if he had gone in the wrong direction, he basically buried his head in the pitch-black underground. He even thought that even Earth Traveler's son of the Divine Sealed Decree might not have been as awesome as he was. While he was lost in his thoughts, Yu Qianqiu, who was speeding underground, suddenly came to an emergency stop. He used the earth spell to sense and confirm again. He frowned and muttered, "It's empty in front. Is it another underground cave?" He slowly moved forward and drilled into a stone wall. After moving forward for about 10 meters, he felt that he had reached the edge of the space in front of him. He quietly stuck his head out to take a look and was shocked. He quickly retracted his head. Who would build a hall hundreds of meters underground? Yu Qianqiu was bewildered. He thought his eyes were playing tricks on him, so he stuck his head out of the green stone wall to take a closer look. This time he was certain that it was indeed an underground palace. Moreover, it was a very grand underground palace. The interior of the palace was filled with an ancient and thick, eerie and terrifying aura. There were some fluorites embedded in the surroundings, but there weren't many of them. The dim lighting made the palace even more eerie and terrifying. In a moment of curiosity, Yu Qianqiu carried a spear on his shoulder and a few wild pheasants on it. He tiptoed out from the stone wall. He carefully looked around, focusing on the dark passage that connected to the palace. He couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief when he discovered that there wasn't a single person. There wasn't a single chair in the palace. It was completely empty and spotless. There was only a high platform in the center that had steps leading up to it. On the high platform there was a pentagonal platform. There was a stone carving on the stone wall behind the platform. It seemed to be the back view of a scholar writing in front of a writing desk. The carving was very lifelike, but the face couldn't be seen. It seemed mysterious and strange. Yu Qianqiu was getting more and more curious. Why would the stone carving on the main seat use the back view of a scholar as the main character? What was the meaning of this? Could it be that this scholar had some unusual meaning? He looked at the stone walls on his left and right, and was attracted by the stone carvings on the walls on both sides. On both sides there were 6 men wearing mighty battle armor. Their faces were lifelike, but they were all different. However, each of them had an extraordinary aura. There were a total of 12 people on both sides. All of them were facing the portrait of the scholar's back on the stone wall, as if they were in awe of the scholar, giving the impression that they were all the scholar's subordinates. Could it be that this was an underground palace used for sacrificial ceremonies? Who would dig a palace several hundred meters underground? Yu Qianqiu carried a spear with a few wild pheasants on it. He stood in the main hall and rubbed his chin. Suddenly his body trembled. He looked at the 12 armored statues on both sides in a daze. He suddenly remembered that there was a group of practitioners from the underworld in the Eastern Holy Land. It was said that they lived in the underground world. Could this underground palace be the 12 underworld generals of the underworld? Could they be the 12 underworld generals of the underworld? Yu Qianqiu stared at the stone carving of the scholar on the main seat on the high platform. He gasped and mumbled to himself, could it be that this scholar is the legendary emperor of the underworld? How could the emperor of the underworld be a scholar? That's right. He is the emperor of the underworld, the ruler of the underworld. A woman's voice rang out behind him. Yu Qianqiu was startled. He turned around hastily and accidentally threw the few dead wild pheasants on the spear far away. He saw a woman in black clothes with half of her face covered by a black veil. She had long hair that reached her shoulders. Other than the black veil on her face, she had no other accessories on her body. Although she looked like a living person, The deathly energy on her body was even heavier than that of Yuji of the Chilly Wind Valley. She was looking at him curiously. Who are you? Yu Qianqiu held the spear with both hands and pointed it at her. His action seemed a bit childish. The mysterious woman glanced at the wild pheasant that had fallen to the ground, then looked at Yu Qianqiu's almost naked attire, and a stunned expression appeared on her face as she asked in a puzzled voice, "Are you a native from another tribe?" Then she reacted and said with a frown, "It's impossible. How could a native of the outside world break into this place? Who are you?" Yu Qianqiu had calmed down and was ready to leave at any time. He put away the spear and walked over to pick up the wild pheasants he had thrown aside. He put the pheasants on the spear and put them on his shoulder again. He looked at her and sneered, "You don't dare to show your true face. Where did you come from? How dare you break into this place?" "I broke into this place?" The woman paused and said, "This is the sacred hall I built myself. I am the underworld saintess appointed by His Majesty the Emperor of the Underworld. How could I be a female thief?" Yu Qianqiu was startled when he heard this. He didn't expect that this woman would tell him all her secrets just by asking casually. Why did he feel that she was a bit stupid? With a tentative attitude he asked, "The Underworld Saintess? How come I have never heard of it? What does the Underworld Saintess do?" "Preside over all the important ceremonies of the Underworld," the mysterious woman asked rhetorically. "You don't even know this?" "I think I have heard of it," Yu Qianqiu said disapprovingly. He relaxed his vigilance a little. He had already evaluated this so-called Underworld Saintess as an idiot 80%. But he still didn't dare to underestimate her. He was afraid that he would run into another person who pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger. "Who are you? How could you enter the sacred hall?" the Underworld Saintess asked. "What's so strange about that?" Yu Qianqiu pointed at the passageway behind her and said, "Of course I walked in from there. Otherwise, where do you think I came in from?" "Impossible." The Underworld Saintess shook her head and said, "Unless there is some important ceremony, even the 12 Netherworld generals under the Emperor of the Underworld wouldn't dare to break into this place." "Are you serious?" Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows and asked suspiciously, "If that's the case, your status in the Underworld is even higher than the 12 Netherworld generals? Your cultivation level is also higher than theirs?" "My cultivation level isn't as high as theirs, but they are very respectful to me and have always protected me," the Underworld Saintess said calmly. "Have always protected you?" Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "Why did I hear that the 2 Netherworld generals here have already been killed? How can they still protect you?" "That's because they have completed their mission. I no longer need their protection. This is also their destiny." The Underworld Saintess spoke slowly and then walked over gracefully. Yu Qianqiu quickly dodged to the side. However, he saw that she had no intention of doing anything to him. Instead, she silently walked past him and walked up the stairs to the high platform. Yu Qianqiu realized that this woman didn't make any sound as she walked. It was no wonder that he didn't know she was behind him. She walked to the back of the pentagonal platform and faced the bottom. She nodded slightly at Yu Qianqiu and said, "Come up." "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked casually. However, this woman's words and actions always gave off a gentle and harmless vibe, causing people to involuntarily let down their guard. He thought for a moment and followed her instructions. He carefully walked up the stairs with the long spear in his hand. When he walked up to the high platform, he realized that the pentagonal platform was actually a sand table. It was filled with fine black sand. The Underworld Saintess stretched out her pale hand from her black sleeves and picked up a thin silver stick from the sand table. She gently swept the surface of the sand table until it was flat. Then she said to Yu Qianqiu, "Use your left hand to press a handprint on the sand table." "What?" Yu Qianqiu asked again. However, he still shifted the spear from his left shoulder to his right shoulder. He stared at the Underworld Saintess without moving his eyes. He was afraid that she would play tricks on him. However, he was staring at his left palm from the corner of his eyes as he gently pressed it on the black sand table. However, just as his palm pressed on the sand table, he suddenly felt an inexplicable restlessness in his heart. He felt strange. Why did he have to do as she said? He immediately rubbed his palm and erased the handprint on the sand table. He stared at the Underworld Saintess and sneered, "Why should I listen to you?" Chapter 794. The Netherworld Saintess didn't answer. Her gaze was calm as she stretched out her pale right hand and slowly pressed it on the black sand table. Although the originally flat sand table had been messed up by Yu Qianqiu, she still accurately found the position where Yu Qianqiu pressed his palm. The position where their palms pressed overlapped. Yu Qianqiu looked at her suspiciously. He didn't know what this so-called netherworld saintess was doing. Although he didn't know what the face under the black veil looked like, judging from the delicate outline of the upper half of her face, her appearance shouldn't be too bad. Under her brows that were like distant mountains, her eyes were slightly closed, revealing a faint puzzled expression. The netherworld saintess opened her eyes and withdrew her pale palm from the sand table. She stared at Yu Qianqiu and asked curiously, "Why is it like this?" "Like what?" Yu Qianqiu's gaze swept over the sand table, but he couldn't see anything. He expressed his suspicions and asked, "What are you doing?" The netherworld saintess swept the sand table with her silver rod again, and then gently placed it on the sand table. A silver line was immediately inlaid on the fine black sand. The two colors were very conspicuous, suddenly giving people a mysterious and shocking feeling. Yu Qianqiu's heart thumped. He felt that something was strange and quickly looked away. The netherworld saintess looked at him with a serene and peaceful gaze. It was filled with a purity that stood aloof from worldly affairs, and also seemed to contain the light of wisdom that could see through everything. After carefully sizing up Yu Qianqiu, the black veil revealed a strange tone and said, "Your life should have ended long ago, but why are you still alive and well? What a strange fate, even I can't see through it. What are you babbling about? You, the netherworld saintess, can't be a witch, right?" Yu Qianqiu sneered. Suddenly, the smile on his face froze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. He suddenly thought of something from the sentence, "Your life should have ended long ago." Whether it was him in his previous life or this body in this life, as the netherworld saintess said, his life should have ended long ago, the other party's words made him feel as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He coughed and asked tentatively, "I say, saintess, do you know how to read fortunes?" The netherworld saintess suddenly fell into silence. Her clear eyes suddenly turned pitch black as if there were stars swimming in them. Yu Qianqiu was immediately startled and he looked at her nervously. After a long time, her eyes finally returned to normal. She looked at him quietly and said, "You are a variable. I can't figure out your fate. I can't predict your fate. The two netherworld generals who protected me have fallen. It seems that I will not be too long before I return." Yu Qianqiu was tickled by her mysterious words. He scratched his head and asked again, "You really know how to read fortunes?" "I don't know how to read fortunes, but I try to understand the fate of others. It is my honor to be able to understand the fate of others," the netherworld saintess said calmly. When she said this, he could actually feel a sense of piety and holiness from her body. She really had the demeanor of a master of metaphysics. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. The more humble a person was, the more he believed that they were truly capable. He casually threw the spear on his shoulder along with a few hard pheasants off the stage. He rubbed his hands excitedly and respectfully and asked for guidance. "Respected saintess, my life is long and full of confusion. Please understand my fate. Let me know how I should walk in the future so that I can make as few mistakes as possible." The netherworld saintess quietly shook her head and said, "Your fate is full of variables and I can't understand it. Even if I can understand the fate of others, I won't tell anyone. Otherwise I will change the fate of others and that will be my sin. I will lose the ability to understand the fate of others. Don't force me. Even the emperor of the underworld never forces me." Having said that, she turned around and bowed to the sculpture of the emperor of the underworld on the stone wall with her arms folded. Then she walked around the pentagonal stage and walked down the stairs. Yu Qianqiu followed her obediently and said, "I won't let you tell anyone about it. You can just point me in the right direction and let me use it as a reference. I don't think it's too much to ask of you, right?" The netherworld saintess walked slowly toward the passage, ignoring him. Yu Qianqiu said "Hey" a few times. Finally he couldn't help but say angrily, "I think you are a liar. You obviously don't know anything but you still pretend to be profound." The netherworld saintess, who was near the entrance of the passage, suddenly turned around and stared at him. Goading her worked. Yu Qianqiu stopped, his expression stiff. "It's easy to prove that you are not a liar. You can calculate how many wives I will have in the future, how high my cultivation will be, and how long my lifespan will be." He asked a series of questions in one breath, because he guessed that this woman might be someone with great ability. Otherwise, how could she be appointed as the netherworld saintess by the emperor of the underworld? Moreover, she was easy to talk to and didn't have a bad temper. He wouldn't miss such an opportunity. "Yu Qianqiu, I can't help you. You should leave the way you came. Don't follow me anymore. The people outside the divine hall won't be as polite to you as I am to you." Having said that, the netherworld saintess turned around and left. Yu Qianqiu was immediately dumbstruck. From the moment he had entered, he had never mentioned his name. Yet the other party had actually called out his name. Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted at the departing figure, "Since you already know my name, what's your name?" "I don't know where I come from. I don't know what my name is, and I don't know who I am. Maybe I don't even have a name. From the moment I woke up, the Emperor of the Underworld told me that I came from the endless darkness, and that I am the Netherworld Saintess. From that moment on, they all called me the Netherworld Saintess, so I am the Netherworld Saintess. I don't have a name. I am the Netherworld Saintess, and the Netherworld Saintess is me." As the figure of the Netherworld Saintess disappeared into the depths of the long tunnel, the voice also faded away. Yu Qianqiu stood alone in the dim underground sacred hall for a while. He wanted to go out with the Netherworld Saintess, but he didn't dare to. Just as the Netherworld Saintess had said, the meditation practitioners outside would not be polite to an intruder like him. Looking around the holy palace once more, he suddenly felt as if he was dreaming. He had suddenly appeared here, and then a woman who claimed to be the Underworld Saintess had suddenly appeared. After a baffling conversation, he felt as if it was all very surreal. It was as if the two of them were destined to meet here for a short period of time. He calmed himself down and stopped thinking about it. It was more important to do his own things. Yu Qianqiu's gaze fell on the things he had thrown away. He walked over and skewered a wild pheasant with his long spear and carried it on his shoulder again. Suddenly he began to walk in the footsteps of a Beijing opera. He pointed his finger at the wall in front of him. His eyes were wide open as he shouted, "Look at the dark hole in front of us. It must be the thieves' lair. Wait for me to catch up and kill them all." Dong dong dong. He rushed into the wall and disappeared. It was lonely to travel alone in the dark underground. Moreover, the speed underground was not as fast as flying in the sky, so he could only find ways to relieve his boredom. A few days later, he suddenly felt that the surrounding soil was getting harder and harder, and the surrounding temperature was getting higher and higher. Feeling curious, he came out of the ground to check, and to make sure that he had not deviated from the direction he was walking. A head suddenly popped out of a vast and desolate Gobi desert. The head was full of small braids and it was looking around. This was a very wide desert and there were no obstacles in sight. The sky was high, the clouds were clear, and the sun was bright and clear. Yu Qianqiu directly jumped out of the ground and breathed in the fresh air. He had been so bored underground for the past few days. This place was spacious enough. Although it was easy to be discovered by others, it was also easy for him to discover others, which was good for escaping. Now he felt sick at the thought of going underground. The excitement he had when he had mastered the earth formula had already faded away in the past few days. Anyone who went underground and had to see rats and earthworms running around in fear would not be able to feel happy. He carried the long spear and swayed for a while, but he did not find any signs of anyone flying in the sky. The surroundings were also desolate. Other than the grayish-brown gravel, there was no sign of life, not even a blade of grass. Such signs might have something to do with the high temperature here, which was abnormal. But it was also to his liking. It was better if there was no one. He put away the spear and flew freely in the vast Gobi Desert. He did not encounter any obstacles along the way, but the temperature was getting higher and higher. It was so high that it was scary. If he did not cultivate the fire formula, he was afraid that he would not be able to withstand it for long, no matter how high his cultivation was. As far as Chu Tian's eyes could see, a hazy gray shadow suddenly appeared on the Gobi Desert. When he got closer, he discovered that it was a continuous range of mountains. Once he flew above the mountains, he suddenly felt that he could not bear it and landed on a bare mountain top. The mountains in front of him were all bare. Animals and plants could not possibly survive under such high temperature. Yu Qianqiu looked around and his face showed some surprise. He really could not understand. Logically speaking, he cultivated the fire formula, so he should not be afraid of high temperature. But he actually faintly felt that he could not bear it. He looked in front of him. Judging from the feelings he had felt along the way, the temperature there should be even higher. He did not dare to go forward, afraid that he, a person who cultivated the fire formula, would be roasted. In the midst of his fear and hesitation, a pleasantly surprised expression suddenly appeared on his face. He quickly looked around as if he was looking for something. Think about it, not to mention the temperature of ordinary fire, he was not even afraid of the tyrannical high temperature of the blue fire. Then what kind of high temperature in this world could deter him? Without a doubt, other than the legendary purple fire that ranked first in the true Samadhi fire, he really could not think of anything else that could have a higher temperature. Chapter 795. Thinking of this, his excitement overcame his fear of the high temperature. He gritted his teeth and continued to fly forward. He firmly believed that the place with the highest temperature was the place where the purple flames were most likely to appear, so he was looking for trouble. However, after flying for several kilometers, he felt that he could no longer fly. The temperature in front of him was simply too high, so high that it was frightening. He used the fire art to resist the high temperature, but he was still tormented by the high temperature. He fell from the sky in a sickly state, panting heavily as he looked around, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This godforsaken place was even more fiery than the flaming mountain in Journey to the West. It was probably comparable to Taishang Laojuan's 8 trigrams furnace. He did not know how that furry monkey managed to survive. It seemed like the legendary Samadhi true fire was used to refine Sun Wukong. Damn it! All hail Sun Wukong! Yu Qianqiu stood at the top of the mountain and took a deep breath. He immediately realized that the air around him was filled with the smell of sparks. He uprooted a large tree from Utopia and casually waved it out. As soon as it left the protection of his fire art, it immediately ignited with a buzz. The fire instantly became ferocious, and the tree that was filled with water instantly turned into ashes and scattered, leaving him speechless. Without a doubt, this was the easternmost land that Jianghu had mentioned. No wonder she said that no one could go deep. Even he who cultivated the fire art could not endure it. No matter how high the cultivation of others was, it would probably be difficult. The sun was blazing in the sky, and the ground was thousands of times hotter than the sun. Yu Qianqiu felt like he was a bun in a steamer that was about to be cooked. However, looking around, the mountains rose and fell, and the world was vast. He could not see a single trace of the purple flames. He really could not stay any longer. If he did, he would definitely die, let alone go deeper. Yu Qianqiu immediately took out a small silver ball and prepared to leave. However, as soon as he threw the small silver ball, it turned into a pool of mercury before it even hit the ground. He was stunned for a moment, but immediately realized that the temperature was too high. Left with no choice, he found the small porcelain bottle that he had prepared in the past and gently placed it on the ground. As soon as it left his hand, the small porcelain bottle immediately turned into a grayish-brown color. Cracks appeared on its surface and it shattered into several pieces. The corner of Yu Qianqiu's mouth twitched. He took out a large lump of nether iron and tried again. However, the moment he let it go, the nether iron instantly emitted black smoke and turned into black water, dyeing the ground black. Your grandfather, you can't expect me to retreat outside and come back in again, right? Yu Qianqiu cursed as he pointed at his surroundings. In the end, Bai Changchun decided to go all out. He took out a storage bracelet and took out treasures one by one and threw them out. These were the treasures Bai Changchun had obtained when he killed Jin Miao and the others in the cannibal tribe. He wanted to see what kind of treasures could withstand such high temperatures. The result left him dumbfounded. All the treasures he had thrown out had turned into liquid metal. Yu Qianqiu was completely speechless. These were all treasures from the immortal world. The power of these purple flames was simply too terrifying. He had not even seen the purple flames yet, but the heat they emitted was already so terrifying. Speechless, he gritted his teeth and took out Jin Miao's defensive treasure, the golden umbrella. Once the golden umbrella was taken out, it immediately shone with golden light. What made him overjoyed was that it was indeed a treasure personally bestowed by the immortal emperor. It could actually withstand such terrifying heat. Damn, it really is a good treasure. Yu Qianqiu, who was hiding in the golden light under the umbrella, was extremely cocky. Under the protection of the golden umbrella, the temperature inside and outside were worlds apart. Without a word, he immediately flew up with a big umbrella that shone with golden light. He hid under the umbrella and looked around contentedly, hoping to find traces of the purple flames. He was dressed almost completely naked, but he was flying with an umbrella. The way he was dressed was extraordinarily avant-garde. However, not long after, he realized that something was wrong. It seemed like the protective golden light emitted by the golden umbrella was a little chaotic and was shining dimly. Yu Qianqiu also felt the heat coming from the handle of the umbrella. Not good. This golden umbrella was powerful, but it could only last for a limited time. If he persisted any longer, this good treasure would be destroyed. Yu Qianqiu hurriedly landed and looked around anxiously. He had to find a way to leave a teleportation coordinate, or he would have to repeat the journey here indefinitely. After hesitating for a while, the golden umbrella had already begun to turn red, like a red-hot soldering iron. In his panic, Yu Qianzhou's eyes suddenly lit up. He remembered the scene when Immortal Crocodile had used the divine sword to kill Jin Miao. The power of the divine sword could not even be blocked by the golden umbrella, so it was naturally more powerful than the golden umbrella. Moreover, the divine sword had absorbed his blood essence, so it was a good item to use as a teleportation coordinate. At this thought, he saw that the golden umbrella was about to collapse. He did not dare to hesitate anymore. The divine sword flashed quickly and stabbed into the ground with a swoosh. Yu Qianzhou directly carried the umbrella and disappeared on the spot. Lady Mu was meditating under a tall magnolia tree on Obedient Island in the demonic ghost domain when she suddenly heard the sound of something falling into the water, followed by a strange splash. When she opened her eyes, she immediately saw intense white smoke rising from the lake beside Obedient Island. It was a vast expanse of whiteness. Lady Mu teleported over with an angry look on her face. She was just about to rebuke the newcomer when she heard Yu Qianzhou's comfortable moans coming from the boundless white mist. She couldn't help but be startled. When the white fog rose and disappeared, she saw a shirtless Yu Qianzhou playing around in the lake with a golden umbrella. After the temperature had completely cooled down, Yu Qianzhou quickly flashed to Obedient Island and took out the golden umbrella again. The golden light from the umbrella's rim once again wrapped him up. Seeing that the treasure was not damaged, Yu Qianzhou finally heaved a sigh of relief and put away the golden umbrella. When he saw Miss Mu, who was looking at him with a surprised expression, he turned his hand and summoned a water dragon from the 1,000-mile lake. The meandering water shot over and instantly froze into a large block of ice that was several meters wide. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said, "Hurry up and send some fresh fruits over. I almost died from the heat." After saying that, he directly flashed into the big house and lay down on the mat on the ground, enjoying the cool shade. He still had a lingering fear of the terrifyingly high temperature in that damned place. After some time, Lady Mu smilingly came in with a plate of all kinds of fresh fruits. The plate was even sprinkled with crushed ice to cool it down. The fragrance of the cold fruits was refreshing. Yu Qianzhou got up and grabbed the fruits on the plate and chewed on them. He even swallowed a few pieces of ice. A chill rose from his stomach and he finally got rid of his fear of the high temperature. Just as he burped, he suddenly thought of the godly sword. He wondered if he could still withstand the heat after such a long time. Could it be like the golden umbrella, which could only withstand the heat for a while? Thinking of this, he suddenly became nervous. That was a good treasure. Please don't destroy it. He immediately disappeared from the big house. When he reappeared in that desolate and uninhabited place, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and the godly sword sprang up from the ground and landed in his hand. He touched it everywhere and couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. The godly sword was indeed a godly sword. It was actually immune to high temperature. Even after such a long time, it was still as cold as an unsheathed sword. He finally heaved a sigh of relief and relaxed. Looking around, he enlarged the godly sword in his hand and held it in his arms to cool himself down. He then flew into the sky again and continued to search for traces of the purple flames in this barren land. When the high temperature was too much for him to bear, he once again took out the golden umbrella to resist for a period of time. When the golden umbrella could no longer withstand it, he immediately stabbed the godly sword into the ground and returned to Obedient Island with the golden umbrella to cool himself down again. After going back and forth like this for a long time, it was finally nighttime. As soon as night fell, Yu Qianzhou immediately became spirited. He thought that as long as the purple flames appeared, they would definitely shine. Night was the best time to find the purple flames. Under the starry sky, Yu Qianzhou, who had been tossing and turning in this barren land until the middle of the night, was not discouraged. It seemed that he would not give up until he found the purple flames. Under the repeated torture of the high temperature, his mental state was quite dispirited. However, he still forced himself to persevere in his search. This persisted for a few days. Whether it was the consumption of his mental state or the consumption of his true essence, it was extremely huge. At times like this fellow's commendable fighting spirit would come out and he would forcefully stuff a large amount of elixirs into his stomach to persevere. He firmly believed that as long as he put in the effort, he would be rewarded. Lady Mu did not know what he was doing, but she found that every time he came back, his condition would worsen. When she saw him eating elixirs as if they were his meals, she could not help but be secretly worried. Another 10 or so days passed. Yu Qianzhou, who had searched this barren land for thousands of miles, began to feel disappointed. Could it be that the purple flames could only be seen by those who were fated? And that he was not fated to see the purple flames? Or was it that the method he was searching for had gone astray? Or was there no purple flames here at all? After some reflection, he firmly believed that the abnormality of this place proved that there were purple flames here. As for whether it was fated or not, it could not compare to the word diligence. Diligence represented success and diligence represented fate. The only thing he needed to reflect on now was that the method he was searching for was definitely wrong, and he had gone astray. Under the bright starry sky, the terrifyingly high temperature did not decrease in the slightest. Yu Qianqiu looked around and frowned as he pondered. Purple flames, what kind of form did they take? Several people, including that rotten crow, had told him that the purple flames were the source of power that supported the operation of this world. They were infinitely powerful, and it was difficult for those who were not fated to see them. Could it be that the purple flames were originally scattered, and would only be seen when they were relatively concentrated? This thought flashed through his mind and immediately caused his body to tremble. He suddenly turned around and looked around this barren land that spanned thousands of miles. The light in his eyes grew brighter and brighter. Suddenly he faced the boundless wilderness and raised his arms, shouting, I know where you are, I finally found you. Chapter 796. After going through countless hardships and connecting all the clues together at this moment he suddenly understood. The reason why the purple flame could appear and disappear so mysteriously, making it so difficult for people to see it, was not because it could turn invisible, but because it could split into many parts, making it impossible for people to see it with the naked eye. Since he had determined that there were purple flames here, then this must be the eye of the heaven and earth formation. But why couldn't he see the purple flames? He now completely understood that it was not that he couldn't see the purple flames, but because the purple flames had split into parts and were scattered throughout the eye of the formation. No wonder he could smell sparks in the air when he first came in. He was actually in the world of purple flames, but he was looking for them everywhere. How could he find them? This must be what they meant by being in this mountain. He had gone down the wrong path from the beginning. He should not have used the fire technique to resist the high temperature here. In the end, he had suffered so much for nothing. The scorching heat was getting more and more unbearable, causing Yu Qianqiu to quickly wake up from his thoughts. He calmly swept his gaze across his surroundings. He stabbed the divine sword into the ground and sat cross-legged confidently on the mountain peak. The fire technique began to give up on resisting the high temperature, and instead boldly absorbed the fire elements hidden in the air. His train of thought was not wrong, but he had forgotten the most important point. He was currently in the space of purple flames. Giving up on resisting the high temperature was tantamount to suicide. Just like how he had collected the green and black flames, he had collected them near them. If he had rashly barged in, he would have died as well. His impulsive decision immediately caused him to taste the bitter consequences. The moment he gave up on resisting the high temperature, an endless pain, as if his body was being burned by raging flames, struck the deepest part of his soul. Ah! Before he could scream, he had lost all his senses and collapsed. Almost at this moment, a dazzling golden light erupted from his abdomen at the fastest speed, protecting him and quickly dispersing the endless heat around him. When a cool feeling spread from his dantian to his limbs and bones, he slowly woke up. The moment he opened his eyes, he immediately realized that he had done something stupid. When he got up, he was surprised to find that the high temperature around him did not dare to approach him. What was going on? His gaze fell on the divine sword in front of him, and his eyes immediately brightened. Could it be that the divine sword had displayed a miraculous effect to protect him? The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was true. Suddenly, he felt that the high temperature around him was approaching again after he woke up. Not daring to hesitate any longer, he quickly sat down cross-legged and pushed the circulation of his fire art to the limit. Something strange happened. Just as he was about to activate the incantation to absorb the heat, the surrounding heat that was about to approach him seemed to have seen some kind of terrifying monster. They quickly dispersed, wanting to get as far away as possible. No matter how hard Yu Qianqiu tried to absorb, they would not come over even if they were beaten to death. It was as if they knew that once he absorbed them, they would become his vassals and puppets. In the blink of an eye, the temperature around Yu Qianqiu plummeted. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu opened his eyes and cursed. He looked around and quickly released his chi to lock onto a ball of high temperature in the air. Using a method similar to the absorbing stars technique, he forcefully absorbed the little sprites that were invisible to the naked eye into his body. After the things were absorbed into his body, Yu Qianqiu was 100% sure that what he had absorbed was indeed the elemental body of the purple fire. However, he found that the purple little sprites were 1,000 times more delicate than the black and blue fire elements. No wonder it was difficult to discover them after they were scattered. So that was the reason. Some of the purple little sprites were like prisoners that had been suppressed. They had been resisting stubbornly and seemed to be very unconvinced. However, after being escorted to his dantian, they immediately became excited when they saw the red fire attribute crystal bead that was operating. They took the initiative to rush over and circled around the red crystal bead twice, as if they were discussing something with the red crystal bead. When the red crystal bead agreed, the little fellows all rushed into the red crystal bead. Just as the purple fire elements entered, the red crystal bead immediately erupted with red light, illuminating the entire dantian. Yu Qianqiu was still secretly amused. Suddenly he found that his dantian seemed to be summoning something. The purple fire elements that were hiding from him began to circle above his body. Gradually they gathered in the sky and formed a purple cloud pillar. Then they rushed over in a frenzy. Following the circulation of the fire art, it quickly drilled into every pore of his body and gathered in his meridians, forming a purple wave that rushed into his dantian. It desperately drilled into the sparkling red crystal bead. It was a lively scene. At this time Yu Qianqiu was sitting quietly on the peak of the mountain. The purple cloud circled above his head. The scene was extremely spectacular. What outsiders did not know was that the temperature around him at this time was simply terrifying to the extreme. It was likely that nothing could come close. The body of the divine sword that was inserted in front of him began to show a dark golden light. It seemed to be protecting itself from the damage of the high temperature. As the purple fire elements surged into the red crystal bead, the volume of the red crystal bead actually slowly increased until it was twice the size of the other beads. Only then did the purple fire elements stop surging in. With the exit cut off, the other purple fire elements quickly rushed towards the walls of his dantian and filled every cell in his limbs and bones. The purple cloud above Yu Qianqiu's head became more and more vigorous. It seemed that because he was here absorbing the purple fire elements from all directions crazily surged towards him. Suddenly the weather between heaven and earth changed. It became dark and gloomy. With the appearance of a bolt of lightning, the purple cloud ignited with a boom. A purple sea of fire suddenly appeared in the sky. The raging purple sea of fire covered the sky and covered the earth. Between heaven and earth, there was a purple light. It was a spectacular sight. At this time, Yu Qianqiu's absorption of the purple fire elements was already saturated. He stopped absorbing and slowly stood up to look at the purple fire wonder in the sky. At the same time he stopped absorbing, the purple sea of fire in the sky began to move. It seemed to be melting and gradually formed 108 dazzling purple fireballs. They slowly arranged themselves into a strange three-dimensional formation, like a pyramid. The 36 fireballs in the upper half were larger, and the 72 fireballs in the lower half were smaller. This strange formation quietly floated in the air without moving. High up in the sky, the dark clouds were densely packed with lightning snakes, constantly swimming. Yu Qianqiu stared at the formation above his head in a daze. He waited for a long time but it did not spread. For a moment, he felt an itch to try and see if he could control the 108 purple fireballs above him after absorbing the purple fire. He raised his hand to the sky and locked onto a purple fireball at the foot of the formation. He used the fire art and successfully plucked the purple fireball from the formation. It slowly floated towards him. However, not long after the purple fireball left the formation, the entire formation suddenly trembled, as if it had lost its balance. The remaining 107 fireballs in the blink of an eye began to sway and fall into a mess. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu cried out in shock. He instinctively felt that he had caused some trouble. He desperately tried to put the purple fireball he had plucked back into its original position, but the formation had already collapsed. Nothing could be done. At the instant the formation was in chaos, thunder boomed in the dark clouds high up in the sky. The entire ground seemed to be shaking. On Xianshan Island outside the East Holy Land, Patriarch Nenming teleported to the peak of the mountain. His eyes flickered as he stared at the pitch-black sky above the East Holy Land. Thunder boomed there and he did not know what was about to happen. At this moment he suddenly felt a tremor beneath his feet. When he turned around he immediately realized that the entire Xianshan Island was shaking. The towering boulders on the mountain collapsed and rolled into the sea. Above the sea there was already a strong gale and huge waves that reached the sky. The volcano on Xianshan Island, which had been silent for countless years, began to emit black smoke. It seemed like it was about to erupt. Patriarch Nanming was shocked. He immediately gathered his true essence and shouted at all the disciples of Xianshan Island, "All disciples of Xianshan Island, listen up. Leave the island immediately. All disciples of Xianshan Island, listen up. Leave the island immediately." Patriarch Nanming's voice covered the entire Xianshan Island. The panicking disciples on the island immediately flew away when they heard his voice. There were probably more than 1,000 of them. Just as Patriarch Nanming flashed into the sky, the volcano on Xianshan Island finally erupted with a boom. The gushing lava instantly engulfed the disciples who could not escape in time. Screams filled the air, and the volcanic ash covered the sky like a dark cloud. As the smoke and dust billowed, Xianshan Island below rumbled again. This time it did not spew lava again. Instead it collapsed. A huge red dragon spread its wings and carried Patriarch Nanming down from the volcanic ash in the sky to the surging sea. It flapped its wings and hovered in the air. Patriarch Nanming's eyes were filled with sorrow as he watched Xianshan Island collapse and sink into the sea. What Patriarch Nanming did not know was that it was not only his Xianshan Island that sank. The 108 islands surrounding the East Holy Land, including Xianshan Island, had all collapsed and sunk into the vast sea. The largest city in the East Holy Land was the Celestial City. At this moment, all the celestial cultivators had flown outside and were watching the huge change in the sky with bewilderment. The sky was dark and thunder rumbled. No one knew what was happening. The meditation cultivators in the underground world also felt the huge change in the world. The underground space was collapsing one after another, and the meditation cultivators all dodged. The underworld saintess stood alone in the underground sacred hall. Although she felt the strong tremors, she was not alarmed. She silently watched the wall carvings on the high platform in the back of the Emperor of the Underworld. At this moment, 4 meditation cultivators with profound cultivation teleported over. Usually they would not dare to do this, but today's incident was too sudden, so they could not care less. They bowed in unison and the leader said anxiously, "The world has changed. It is too dangerous to stay underground. We swear to protect the Saintess to the surface to temporarily hide. Saintess, please leave with us quickly." The underworld Saintess folded her arms and bowed to the wall carvings of the Emperor of the Underworld calmly. She then turned to face the 4 anxious people and said slowly, "Pass down my order. Everyone is to gather and prepare to return to the underworld. The great formation of heaven and earth is about to be broken." Chapter 797. When the 4 of them heard this, they were stunned. They all thought that they had heard wrongly and looked at each other inquisitively. When the Netherworld Saintess quietly passed by the 4 of them, she said again, "The Eastern Holy Land is about to be broken. Everyone gather. It's time to return to the Netherworld." The 4 of them were instantly shocked and revealed expressions of indescribable joy. The words of others might be false, but to them the Saintess' words were absolutely not false. They immediately bowed and said, "Understood." Then 2 of them followed beside the Netherworld Saintess to protect her, while the other 2 quickly went to pass on the order. Yu Qianqiu stared dumbfoundedly at the huge change between heaven and earth. He saw the 108 purple fireballs floating in the air move chaotically, as if they were being pulled by an invisible rope. They wanted to break free but were pulled back by each other. However, because the weather was already chaotic, the invisible rope's power seemed to be limited. With a thunderous boom, the invisible rope finally broke. The 108 purple fireballs quickly rushed into the sky and condensed into a ball. The light gradually extinguished, turning back into purple mist and merging with the dark clouds in the sky. After the purple mist merged with the dark clouds, it immediately began to rain heavily. The pitter-patter was so rapid that it wantonly watered this vast desolate land. The barren hills in the desolate desert were instantly covered in mist. The high temperature that had persisted for who knew how many years had finally started to cool down. Perhaps after a few years, this place would become verdant and full of life. Who knew if there would be people thanking a certain person who had caused a great disaster at that time? The heavy downpour continued for an entire day, completely lowering the high temperature below. At this time, the lightning and thunder in the dark clouds began to die down. Then, a violent wind blew, and the dark clouds that filled the sky began to drift in all directions. Not long after, the world began to gradually regain its clarity, as if nothing had happened. Only the sudden change in temperature told of the huge change that had just occurred. Yu Qianqiu stood on the mountain peak like a drowned rat, completely dumbfounded. If he hadn't guessed wrong, he should have destroyed the formation Eye of the Heaven and Earth formation. If I'm not wrong, the Heaven and Earth Great Array should have been broken by me. What he didn't know was that the so-called Heaven and Earth Great Array of Heaven and Earth contained the Tao of Heaven and Earth. Once the Great Array was set up, it would immediately absorb the power of Heaven and Earth to support the operation of the Great Array. The absorbed origin energy was converted into the 36 heavenly spirits and 72 earthly fiends to form the core of the formation. If one did not know the method to break this formation, it would be almost impossible to break it with brute force, unless one had the strength to destroy the entire planet. Yu Qianqiu's absorption of the purple fire elements had more or less destroyed the balance of the formation. As a result, the Eye of the formation had appeared and was adjusting the balance of power on its own. But he had actually plucked away one of the fireballs that represented the 72 earthly fiends, completely destroying the balance of the Eye of the formation. The 36 celestial dippers and 72 earthly fiends were in chaos, and the formation Eye was destroyed by him. With the formation Eye destroyed, the formation was naturally broken by him. The Myriad Swords Demon Lord, who had set up this formation back then, probably never would have thought that the Heaven and Earth Great Array could actually be broken by someone like this. On the tallest building in the Immortal City, the Rakshasa, who had already become the actual owner of this place, led a group of people and looked at the dispersing dark clouds in the sky. Everyone felt a little baffled. They did not know why there was thunder and earth quaking. At that moment, a group of meditation cultivators suddenly appeared in the sky. They formed a group and hurried west. The Rakshasa frowned and shouted angrily with a hoarse voice, "Someone go and ask what exactly is going on." Yes. A person behind him quickly caught up to the group of meditation cultivators. After asking around, he quickly flew back and said with cupped hands, "Sky? Sky? Sky." From the looks of it, he seemed to be so agitated that he did not know what to say. Slap. The Rakshasa immediately gave him a big slap and made him spin around. He shouted angrily, "Sky, what sky? Tell me what exactly is going on." That person immediately woke up from the slap, but the agitation on his face did not disperse. He cupped his hands again and reported, "The Netherworld cultivators said that the Heaven and Earth Great Array has been broken. They want us to quickly return to the celestial world and not be trapped here anymore." "Nonsense. Don't you have a brain?" The Rakshasa shouted angrily and gave him another big slap. This slap was much heavier than the previous one. That person almost fell to the ground on the spot. After that person stumbled, he finally could not be agitated anymore. He covered his face and said with a sobbing tone, "It's true. They really said that. When I was flying just now, I also realized that the Heaven and Earth Great Array will not extract the celestial essence in my body anymore." The group of people looked at each other. The Rakshasa suddenly looked up into the sky and turned into a stream of light, shooting straight up into the sky. To his surprise, the Heaven and Earth Great Array was really broken. The height that he could not fly at because of the restriction of the Great Array before was now unimpeded. Moreover, there was no phenomenon of the celestial essence in his body being extracted again. However, after being pleasantly surprised for a while, his face instantly turned pale and he felt a chill down his spine. The Rakshasa suddenly thought of Immortal Lord Jianghu, whom he had ambushed and injured. The reason why he ambushed Immortal Lord Jianghu was because he did not want to be restrained by others in this world. That was why he made a desperate move. Who knew that she would still escape? Now that the Heaven and Earth Great Array was broken, everyone had to return to the celestial world. Ambushing Immortal Lord Jianghu was equivalent to doing nothing. The worst thing was that Jianghu was still not found. If the Heaven and Earth Great Array was not broken, everyone would listen to him and there would still be a chance to find Immortal Lord Jianghu. But now that the Great Array was broken, who would be willing to stay in the human world to help him chase after Jianghu? In addition, Jianghu could now escape to a wider range, so the chance of finding her was even slimmer. He now really regretted. If he had known that the Heaven and Earth Great Array would suddenly collapse, he would definitely not have done that. Now that his master, Yi Xiao, was dead, he would not have any backing even if he returned to the celestial world. It was impossible for him to defeat Jianghu. In a flash, a ruthless expression flashed across his face. He had already made up his mind that the most important thing now was to return to the celestial world as soon as possible and find a reliable backing at all costs. That way he would not have to fear Jianghu's revenge. After making up his mind, he quickly turned into a stream of light and returned upstairs. With a smile on his face, he looked around at the crowd and said in a hoarse voice, "Everyone, the heaven and earth great array is indeed broken. We can successfully return to the celestial world." Hearing that, the group of people upstairs immediately cheered. But at this moment, someone suddenly asked, "Then what about immortal Lord Jiwu?" This was like a basin of cold water splashing on everyone's head. Everyone was immediately dumbfounded. Almost everyone present had participated in the pursuit of Jiwu. Rakshasa immediately waved his hand and laughed in a hoarse voice. "Everyone, don't panic. I already have a countermeasure. Jiwu is not the only immortal lord in the celestial world. As long as we are united, I believe any immortal lord will be willing to accept us with such a huge force. By then, why would we need to be afraid of Jiwu?" The person who asked the question nodded slightly. "That's right. As long as we are united, Jiwu will not be able to do anything to us." Everyone looked at each other and nodded silently. They felt that what he said made sense. Everyone. Rakshasa waved his arm and said, "There's no time to lose. Everyone, quickly pack what you can and inform those who need to be informed. In half a day we will return to the celestial world together." "Yes." Everyone responded excitedly. On the top of the mountain, Yu Qianqiu, who had come back to his senses, looked around in a daze. Then he checked the condition of his body. He was shocked when he saw it. Inside his dantian, 8 more nascent souls appeared silently. A total of 10 nascent souls with the same appearance sat cross-legged in a circle. All 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls appeared. Isn't this the peak of the soul formation final stage? Could it be that my cultivation directly broke through to the peak of the soul formation final stage? Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. He carefully checked the condition of his body again. In the end, he couldn't help but let out a breath of cold air. He found that his cultivation had indeed broken through to the peak of the soul formation final stage. He was only 1 step away from becoming a celestial expert. Feeling the surging power in his body that he had never felt before, Yu Qianqiu frowned and fell into deep thought. He felt that it was a bit strange. Why didn't he use a single spirit stone to break through? Apart from absorbing the purple flames, he didn't do anything else. Could it be that the purple flames played a role? That's right, it must be the powerful power contained in the purple flames. His guess was right. The purple flames were the symbol of the matured origin energy of heaven and earth. The powerful power contained in it was not something that spirit stones could compare to. After he absorbed the purple flames, the boundless power immediately felt restricted. Thus, the purple flames changed his cultivation to suit it. In the end, it gave him a huge advantage. It was a pity that he didn't know how to use it. Otherwise, he could use the power of the purple flames to forge an immortal body and become a celestial expert. He missed an opportunity for nothing. Sometimes, gains and losses were determined by fate. He had already taken a huge advantage. If he was too greedy, he might end up empty-handed. Haha. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu was laughing wildly with excitement. This trip was too worth it. Not only did he obtain the purple flames, but he also increased his cultivation to the peak of the soul formation final stage. The hardships he suffered before were too worth it. Fortunately, he gritted his teeth and persevered without giving up. Otherwise, he would definitely regret it to death. Halfway through his wild laughter, his smile suddenly froze. He suddenly looked into the distance. He thought of a big problem. Once the heaven and earth great formation of heaven and earth was broken, wouldn't all the experts from the netherworld and immortal realms who were trapped inside be freed? Once they flooded the human world, who could stop them? Damn it. The human world is my territory. No one is allowed to mess around. If you anger me, I'll use you to test the power of the purple flames. Yu Qianqiu's face flashed with ferocity. He immediately disappeared from where he was standing. Once he returned to Obedient Island, Yu Qianqiu quietly stood beside the 1,000-mile lake. He held a shining white mirror in his hand. It was as if he was holding up a bright moon. The scene that appeared in the mirror was the scene at the entrance of the 9 Netherworld cave in the Yin Wind Valley. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.